The story kicks off with an incredibly heavy, cinematic atmosphere. We're thrown right onto a frozen, desolate battlefield that is absolutely littered with fallen soldiers and shattered weapons. There's this striking, poetic shot of a single white bird landing delicately on a blood-steeped sword. Against the backdrop of snow-covered mountains and ruined fortress walls, it perfectly establishes just how devastating this endless war against the monster horde has been for humanity. But then we get the ultimate plot twist. Standing completely alone against a massive, terrifying horde of red-eyed orcs and demons is a single blonde knight. And the narration drops a bombshell. He isn't just some grizzled veteran. He is literally the reincarnation of the legendary magic sword Gruhorn. For centuries, he was the weapon wielded by ancient heroes, the silent foundation of their myths. But now, he grips his own blade, declaring, "Not as a sword, but as a knight I stand here." It is absolute peak fantasy hype. When the battle actually begins, the art goes completely crazy. Our guy ignites this blinding, intense blue aura that contrasts beautifully against the dark snow and the glowing red eyes of the monster. Our hero released a blue-colored aura that enveloped the whole battlefield, and all the fallen soldiers started to get up, affected from the aura, one by one. And only in a matter of minutes, the whole army of soldiers are ready to fight alongside Orko. Armed with the combined combat experience of every master who ever wielded him, he effortlessly carves through the giant orcs with a confident, almost arrogant smile. Right as he's treating the grunts like target practice, a towering, absolute unit of a boss orc steps up to challenge him. They collide in a massive, blinding explosion of light, and as the light fades, the scene beautifully transitions away from the bloodshed to a bright, peaceful sunrise. We see a pristine, golden sword resting in a quiet green field. Our story doesn't begin with a human, it begins with a weapon. For hundreds of long years, our protagonist existed solely as a sword, a silent witness to the turning of ages. It passed through the hands of countless masters, serving as the very foundation that turned ordinary men into immortalized heroes. But out of all of them, only one truly became its equal, its close friend. That friend was a boy named Leonberg. He wasn't royalty, he was just a kid born in an obscure rural village. But together, they were an absolute force of nature. They roamed the world, fighting back to back against terrifying monsters, and achieving things no one else could even dream of. And it all culminated in one fateful confrontation amidst a raging storm in the snowy White Frost Mountains. Standing in their way was a massive, terrifying black dragon. Leonberg was gripping the sword tight. He was exhausted, battered, but his face was filled with pure determination. The dragon emerged from the snow, gathering immense, destructive energy in its jaws for a deadly strike. But Leonberg didn't flinch. A brilliant blue aura erupted from the sword, wrapping around him. With a defiant smile, Leonberg called the sword his friend, inviting it to launch one final, decisive attack together. They charged. The sword delivered a devastating direct blow, and Leonberg leaped into the air for the finishing strike. They actually did it. They defeated the great dragon. That victory changed everything. Leonberg went on to become the ruler of an entire nation. As for the sword, it was officially christened Gruhorn, gaining legendary fame as the ultimate dragon slayer. After a long, peaceful slumber, Gruhorn is violently jolted awake. Someone is literally shaking the sacred relic like it's a toy. The sword's consciousness flares up, furious. Who is this incredibly rude person, daring to disturb its rest? It looks out and sees a young, angry-looking man shouting at the top of his lungs, declaring that he is the new swordmaster. The guards are panicking, calling him Prince. One brave knight even steps up, begging the boy to put the sacred relic back, reminding him that only His Majesty the King is allowed to touch it. The prince's response? He literally attacks the knight, arrogantly screaming that there is nothing in this country he isn't allowed to touch. The sword looks at this kid and feels nothing but disdain. It decides to use its special appraisal authority to check this brat's identity. The results are incredibly depressing. The boy is Prince Adrian Leonberg. Yes, he is technically a direct descendant of the sword's great friend, but he is also a fat, lazy, violently arrogant boy with absolutely zero talent. The sword is deeply incensed. How could the bloodline of the great sword saint produce someone with such pathetic abilities? Prince Adrian is barely strong enough to even lift the heavy blade, let alone swing it. Yet, his face is twisted with greedy determination. The sword is internally roasting him, thinking, why would I ever lend my power to a ridiculous pig like you? But Adrian doesn't care. He hoists the blade high, screaming for the great dragon slayer to grant him its power. He starts waving it around wildly, shouting Gruhorn, The attendees are in absolute terror, begging him to stop, reminding him that drawing weapons in the palace is strictly forbidden. Adrian just threatens them with death, convinced that he's about to become a living god. He swings the massive sword with all his might, and then suddenly stops. A look of pure, blank confusion washes over his face. In the middle of his chaotic, random swinging, the clumsy prince has literally managed to stab himself. The maids gasp in horror. Adrian collapses to the marble floor, bleeding profusely as the royal guards rush in, screaming his name and desperately calling for the royal physician. The sword is totally baffled, but before it can process what just happened, its vision starts to fade. For the first time in its immortal history, the legendary sword Gruhorn is blacking out. When consciousness finally returns, things are different. The horrifying truth sets in. The original Prince Adrian is dead, and the sword's consciousness has completely taken over his body, and the palace is already buzzing with rumors. The maids are terrified because this infamous tyrant prince, a guy whose existence was basically a dark cloud over the kingdom's future, has suddenly stopped overturning dining tables and summoning his weird cronies. They think he's just hiding in fear after his near-death experience. But our new Adrian doesn't have time to worry about gossip. A servant announces the arrival of His Majesty the King. The pressure in the room skyrockets. A dignified, white-haired man enters first. This is Adrian's old teacher. He scolds the prince for his attitude, noting that surviving death hasn't changed him. But then, the king steps into the room. The sword is immediately struck by the king's sheer presence. The noble lion blood of his old friend hasn't faded one bit. The king looks down at his son with absolute frost in his eyes. He notes the lack of a greeting and assumes Adrian hasn't learned a thing. Trying to play it safe, our MC claims his memory is hazy, a classic amnesia excuse. The teacher gasps, pretending to be shocked and demanding the physician. But the king, he's not buying it for a second. Trying to lie to this man is like trying to lie to Batman. He sees right through the act. The king mocks the memory loss, calling it a very convenient excuse to erase all past misdeeds. He delivers a brutal, biting scolding. Making mistakes is how a person grows, but by claiming to forget everything, Adrian has completely wasted the opportunity to learn. The king states flat that if his past is erased, the prince hasn't taken a single step forward, and his future is just as doomed. The sword realizes with a sinking feeling just how deeply, truly hated the original Adrian was by his own father. It realizes it isn't going to be treated like a prince. It might not even be treated like a human being. Just as the sword is wondering what heinous crimes this kid actually committed to earn such intense hatred, a woman bursts into the room crying, "Ian!" It's the queen. She throws her arms around him in a bone-crushing hug. She reassures him that his memory will return and tenderly holds his face, crying over how thin his beautiful face has become. The sword is completely stunned, internally screaming, "What thinness are you talking about? I'm built like a tavern barrel." But seeing the queen's genuine, tearful relief, it hits him. Her care is a massive, heavy burden, because the son she is so happy to see awake is already gone forever. Night finally falls, and the queen leaves the room. As the door clicks shut, the sword, now trapped inside Prince Adrian's body, lets out a massive sigh of relief. Left alone in the quiet dark, he really has a moment to reflect on his bizarre fate. His oldest, dearest friend had entrusted him to protect this royal bloodline, and what did he do? He accidentally caused the death of one of those descendants. Even if it was an accident, the guilt is heavy. So he makes a vow. Since things have reached this point, he is going to live a good life, not just for himself, but to honor the dead boy. It doesn't matter if this new body is overweight, lazy, and completely devoid of talent. He has centuries of experience raising legendary heroes. He just needs to rebuild his strength from scratch. Step 1. Refining the mana heart. He sits on the bed in a meditative lotus position, closes his eyes, and begins concentrating. A faint, glowing blue aura starts to form around him. He's got this. But suddenly, everything goes wrong. The mana isn't pooling, it's wildly dissipating. This flabby human body literally cannot absorb it. He pushes harder, exerting all his willpower, but the energy violently explodes around him. He collapses to the floor, screaming in despair and agony. If he were still a sword, he could just force the mana in, but this weak physical structure is completely rejecting it. While he's lying there cursing his new human form, a maid tentatively steps into the room. She's carrying a bowl of dark, bitter-smelling tonic sent by the queen. The maid looks terrified, practically begging him to drink it and hoping he won't angrily throw the bowl against the wall like the old Adrian used to do. But our MC isn't paying attention to her fear. He is staring intently at the bowl. He can actually see it. The drink contains traces of pure mana energy. Without a single second of hesitation, he grabs the bowl and chugs the entire bitter concoction in one go. The maid is absolutely stunned. He calmly sets the bowl down and politely orders her to leave. The second the door shuts, he tries again. He begins gathering the tiny bit of mana he just ingested from the drink. It works! The energy actually responds to him, but it's a microscopic amount. It'll fade in a day. So what does he do? Over the next few days, he constantly summons the maids, downing bowl after bowl of the bitter tonic until he finally stockpiles enough mana. The time has come. With overwhelming joy, he begins the process of forging his mana heart. He's guided countless heroes through this exact process. He could literally do it with his eyes closed. Bam! An intense, completely unexpected wave of sheer agony rips through his chest. Suddenly, the memories come flooding back. He remembers the horrifying screams of his former students. He remembers watching their bodies practically burn and their chests nearly explode when they forged their hearts. The forgotten truth hits him like a freight train. Creating a mana heart is supposed to be agonizing. He just never felt it before because he was made of metal. It's like using the Kaioken in Dragon Ball Z. It completely shreds a human body, but he refuses to lose consciousness. If he passes out now, the mana will flow in reverse and literally destroy him. Fighting through the tear-inducing pain, he slowly and carefully guides the raging mana into the correct path. Slowly, slowly. Done. The new heart forms and settles into his chest. He falls to his knees, completely exhausted but victorious. For the first time in his existence, he isn't making a heart for someone else. This is his heart. He shouts out in happiness, but the surprises aren't over. Suddenly, a glowing status window pops up right in front of his face, exactly like a video game UI or the system messages he used to send his old masters. Mana heart created. Connection to the source restored. The system warns him that the connection is weak and unstable, meaning most of his old godly powers are locked. However, it grants him limited use of the third eye and third ear. He rushes to the window to test it out. His vision is crystal clear. He focuses his hearing, and he can perfectly hear the maids whispering all the way down the hall. And then a sharp, splitting migraine hits him. A new system message pops up. Mana exhausted. Powers forcibly terminated. He holds his dizzy head. Extremely limited use really meant extremely limited. He's lost his absolute 360-degree sword senses. Right now, his mana pool is basically a thimble, but he doesn't despair. He just needs to train. First things first, his stomach growls violently. He needs to adapt to being human. Fast forward a few days. The queen visits him again, absolutely thrilled that he's been taking his medicine. But this time, she isn't alone. Standing beside her is a tall, imposing man, her brother, Adrian's uncle. The tension in the room instantly spikes. The queen explains that Adrian has lost his memory and begs her brother to help him recover. The uncle just mocks her. He looks at Adrian and coldly says, "You speak as if he lost a great past. It was a miserable past." It is immediately painfully obvious. This man absolutely loathes his nephew. The uncle steps up to the prince. He firmly states that the only thing he is going to help him do is lose his excess meat. He tells Adrian not to expect any special treatment, and the queen humbly bows in gratitude. The uncle glares at Adrian. Do not forget this feeling of gratitude. And without a single microsecond of warning, the uncle delivers a devastating, full-power kick directly to Adrian's stomach, sending the heavy prince crashing hard to the floor. The uncle stands over him like a drill sergeant. Everything you eat, everything you drink, every breath you take from now on is with my permission. Give up the idea of being treated like a prince. He adds a mocking little jab. But if you do your best, maybe I'll change my mind and teach you exactly one move from our secret family swordsmanship. Inside, the sword is absolutely livid. How dare this man speak to him like that? He was the master of the founding king of this entire nation. He literally trained the invincible knights. The uncle sees the fat prince trembling on the floor and assumes the boy is just crying in frustration. But Adrian slowly looks up, locks eyes with his abuser, and drops a challenge. Let's make a bet. I will make you acknowledge me within 6 months. If he fails, he'll be the uncle's absolute slave. But if he succeeds, the uncle owes him a wish. Thinking this is going to be hilarious, the uncle agrees. Adrian knows his flabby body is his biggest weakness. He needs to lose weight fast. So he closes his eyes and activates his new mana heart, intending to literally burn the fat off his bones using pure magical energy. A brilliant blue aura flares up around him. The uncle physically recoils in shock. What are you doing? Did you already create a mana heart? Adrian gives him a cunning, cocky smile. Yeah, I made one a while ago. Regret taking the bet yet? But instead of looking impressed, the uncle looks furious. He screams at the prince, demanding to know know where he learned such a thing. He tells Adrian he doesn't even realize the massive mistake he just made. The uncle steps forward and drops a lore bomb that completely shatters our MC's worldview. The Mana Heart technique is a primitive, low-level trash technique. It's only learned by third-rate, low-class mercenaries. The sword's mind goes completely blank. What? The pinnacle of ancient magic? The technique he used to slay dragons? It's trash? To prove it, the uncle demonstrates his own power. Instead of a heart, brilliant, perfect rings of mana form around the uncle's body. Mana chains, the uncle explains. He shows how the chains can easily crush the primitive aura of a mana heart, explaining that it's infinitely easier and more stable. The uncle coldly adds that the last noble family to stubbornly stick to the mana heart technique perished over a century ago. Nobody uses it anymore. The sword just stares, utterly devastated. The era has completely moved on without him. His legendary, god-tier knowledge is officially entirely obsolete. The prince sits alone in his room, carefully reading through a thick book on the basic theory of mana chains. He has to admit, the uncle wasn't completely lying. Times have definitely changed. According to the book, the entire magic system evolved. Wizards now use circles to gather mana, while knights weave chains. A knight's total strength is strictly determined by the number of chains they can weave around their heart, ranging from a single chain all the way up to the legendary realm of the 5th chain. As he reads, he realizes this isn't just modern nonsense. He stops at the name Altringon. He suddenly remembers. Back when he was still a sword, a strange, dull-looking man named Ernst Altringon actually came to challenge him to see who was more worthy of the title Sword Saint. And that guy used weird arts that were neither traditional magic nor swordsmanship. The sword smiles to himself, wondering whatever happened to that strange man to make his weird arts the new standard. The next morning, it's back to the brutal reality of training. The uncle glares at Adrian and asks if he read the book. You should realize by now how foolish your choice was, the uncle sneers. But Adrian just gives him a cocky smile. I don't feel I've made the slightest mistake. The uncle sighs in deep despair, convinced his nephew has officially lost his mind. He explains that every now and then, some delusional mercenary pops up, thinking they are an ancient hero using a mana heart, and their fate? Absolute failure and ruin. They never even surpass the power level of a 2-chain knight. The uncle issues an official challenge. If you're so different, try to defeat a knight with 2 chains. If you succeed, I'll become your official guardian, just like your mother wants. Adrian snorts. Is having you as a guardian really a good thing? Oh, that hit a nerve. The uncle is instantly insulted. A massive, powerful aura erupts around him. He proudly declares his full resume. He is a Count of the Kingdom, commander of the Northern Army, master of the Black Spears, and one of the 5 silver lions serving his majesty. And most importantly, he is a knight who has woven 4 rings, a 4th ranked knight. My name is Bill Ballarhard. Are those titles enough to prove my worth? The royal knights actually have to step in to pull the glowing, furious Count away from the prince. Adrian just gives a confident smile. Don't go back on your word later, uncle. A short while later, the grueling training session finally ends. Adrian is completely collapsed on the dirt ground, gasping for air. He feels like he is literally on the verge of death from the physical exertion. As he drags himself through the palace hallways, he internally curses his uncle, calling him a demonic scoundrel. Suddenly, a voice calls out to him. It's the royal physician. The doctor is super grateful that the prince actually remembered him, and explains that the queen specifically ordered him to come and provide healing magic for Adrian's exhausted muscles. As soon as the physician starts glowing with green healing energy, Adrian vehemently rejects it. He forcefully shoves the doctor out of his room, shouting that he doesn't need that kind of treatment. Why? Because he knows the truth about muscle growth. If you use healing magic to instantly recover, your torn muscles just return to their original weak state without actually growing stronger. All his agonizing training today would have been completely in vain. While he's eating dinner later, an uninvited guest shows up. It's a young man with a highly confident smile. Adrian's personal knight whispers the identity. It's the 3rd prince, Jillian. Jillian looks Adrian up and down. I heard about your little incident, but you look in better shape than expected. How disappointing. Adrian doesn't even blink. Did you just come here to cause trouble because you have nothing better to do? Jillian's eyes flash with anger, but he keeps his cool. He leans in and mentions the rumor going around the palace. The bet with Count Ballarhard to defeat a 2-chain knight. I offer to be your opponent in that duel, Jillian says smoothly before leaving. Adrian is just confused. He looks at his knight and denounces the pathetic state of his old friend Leonberg's descendants. But the knight quickly corrects him. Prince Jillian isn't a joke. He is a true prodigy who wove 2 mana chains at the age of 14. Their conversation is abruptly cut off when a troubled-looking maid staggers into the room. She is literally struggling struggling to carry a massive mountain of letters. Adrian is shocked. Why the sudden popularity? He opens a few and bursts out laughing. They are all requests for a duel. The entire palace sees this bet as a legal, free pass to legally beat up the hated tyrant prince and get revenge for all his past bullying. But Adrian doesn't see a threat. He sees a buffet. A wicked smile spreads across his face. He calmly orders the maid to write down the name of every single person who sent a letter. He is going to exploit this situation for maximum gains. Back out in the training yard, the uncle throws a wooden sword into the dirt at Adrian's feet. He states that he has to teach the prince some basic swordsmanship, just so the bet is legally valid and Adrian can't use ignorance of the basics as a hollow excuse when he inevitably loses. Adrian bends down to grab it, grumbling internally about why his uncle couldn't just hand it to him normally. As he moves, a sharp pain shoots through his destroyed muscles. He screams out. The uncle immediately notices and touches Adrian's shoulder. Wait, did you not receive the healing magic?
Adrian looks at him. As a knight, you should know the consequences of that. Healing magic stops muscles from tearing and growing.
The uncle is stunned into silence. He actually respects that decision, but he quickly dismisses the topic and tells Adrian to watch closely, because he is only going to demonstrate this once. A massive mana aura surrounds the count as he executes the kingdom's foundational training sword technique. He moves with extreme brilliance, unleashing a series of perfectly precise, powerful strikes that literally leave deep gouges in the solid ground. When the uncle finishes, Adrian is standing there in absolute disbelief. Wait, this incredibly complex technique is just the basics that beginners learn? The uncle smirks. It lacks sharpness, but it's best for the basics. Honestly, with your non-existent talent, this is more than you deserve. Adrian suddenly bursts into loud, hysterical laughter, clutching his face. He can't believe how much time has changed. He clearly remembers his hero friend, King Leonberg, using this exact same legendary swordsmanship style, the Dragon Slayer style, to literally execute a raging dragon. And now, it's considered humble beginner training. The uncle tells him that these basic moves won't be enough to win the duel, and suggests Adrian beg his mother for a different teacher. But Adrian flatly refuses. He grips the wooden sword tightly. I won't learn any other style. This style alone is perfectly sufficient. The uncle just rolls his eyes and lets him be. As Adrian practices waving the sword, he realizes why the legendary Dragon Slayer technique deteriorated into a low-level basic form. It's a natural phenomenon. The modern knights abandoned the mana heart. They forgot how to literally breathe their will into the blade. Without the true dragon-slaying will as its foundation, it's impossible for these modern knights to realize the true, devastating value of the style. Adrian tries to perform a majestic sword move, and fails miserably, his flabby body betraying him. Don't just concentrate the power in your arms, his uncle immediately barks. Use your stomach, use your legs. Adrian immediately collapses back into the dirt, completely drained. This is going to be a very long 6 months. The grind and the storm. Despite his initial arrogance, Adrian has to admit, his uncle was absolutely right. Performing a true sword technique isn't just about swinging your arms. It requires the synchronized power of the entire body. And right now, his current body is incredibly weak, clumsy, and physically incapable of mimicking even a fake, watered-down version of the legendary Dragon Slayer style. But he refuses to give up. He resolves to prove to everyone, especially his uncle, that his ancient style isn't just discarded junk. Adrian spends every waking hour engaged in harsh, continuous training. After a full month of relentless physical conditioning and deep mana meditation, the results finally show. A glowing system window pops up, announcing a massive change in his physical structure. His status literally upgrades from morbid obesity to regular obesity. It's a small step, but a huge victory. His metabolism skyrockets, and most importantly, that annoying clumsiness debuff completely vanishes. Thanks to his constant mana accumulation, his mana sensitivity disorder is replaced by normal sensitivity. He's suddenly swinging his wooden sword with a fluid, natural grace that was impossible just a month ago. His eyes are blazing with absolute focus. In fact, he gets too focused. We cut to a scene in the training yard during a massive torrential downpour.
Adrian is swinging his sword in the pouring rain, completely lost in the rhythm, performing moves with increasing mastery. He is so locked in that he doesn't even hear a voice desperately screaming at him to stop. "Stop, you idiot!" Suddenly, Adrian is violently yanked backward. It's his uncle, looking absolutely furious. Adrian stands there in shock, his hands literally bleeding onto the wet, muddy ground from the sheer friction of his violent training. Then he looks past his uncle. Crack! The wooden training pole he was just striking is suddenly obliterated by a massive, blinding lightning strike. Smoke and sparks hiss in the rain. His uncle violently shakes him, screaming that if he had been holding a real metal sword instead of a wooden one, that lightning would have instantly killed him. Adrian just stares at his bleeding hands. A system message pings. New trait acquired, supernatural focus. Adrian lets out a breathless, weak chuckle, realizing that if he enters that state again, he might actually die. And with that, he completely blacks out. The epiphany. He wakes up later in his soft bed, clutching his pounding head. He severely underestimated the limits of this fragile human body. Lying there, he reflects on his past. As the legendary sword Gruhorn, he achieved every possible feat. He served countless heroes, from unknown warriors to mercenary kings to the very founder of this kingdom. He led wars and guided legends, but he was always just a third party, just an observer in someone else's story. That is exactly why he is immersing himself in this agonizing training. For the very first time in his existence, he is actually feeling the burn of his muscles, the sweat on his brow, and the sheer joy of exerting effort. The fruits of this labor belong entirely to him, but he realizes he needs to find a balance between his ancient, unyielding spirit and his fragile human limits, or he will literally destroy himself. A few days later, he finally hits a milestone. His mana heart has expanded enough to level up, his body's endurance increases, and a fierce, determined look crosses his face. He grabs a real steel sword from the rack to test his new limits. Rank reached, Sword Apprentice. As he swings the blade, a beautiful, faint blue aura directly coats the steel. He looks at his own reflection in the glowing metal. He finally has enough power to actually use the basics in real combat. The hit list. Later in the training yard, the uncle is complaining. Rumors about Adrian's bet to defeat a two-chain knight are spreading through the kingdom like wildfire, and it's becoming a massive headache for the count. He tells Adrian they need to hurry up and find a training partner. Adrian just smiles confidently. He already knows exactly who his final opponent will be, his prodigy younger brother, Prince Jillian. But he isn't stupid. He knows he can't fight a two-chain genius right out of the gate, so he plans to use all those angry nobles who sent him duel requests as stepping stones. He's going to fight the one-chain knights first. His personal knight, Kars, hands over the compiled list of challengers, but he looks incredibly worried. Kars warns him that these nobles deeply despise the prince. Under the guise of a friendly duel, they will absolutely try to cripple or kill him. Adrian just laughs it off. I know, that's exactly why I need my uncle to act as the official referee. He casually slings his sword over his shoulder. I'm not asking for much, just make sure nobody dies. Can you do that, uncle? The first duel. The day of the first duel arrives. Enter Taylor Talheim, the second son of a baron family. And oh man, Taylor is holding a massive grudge. A few years ago, the original Adrian publicly humiliated Taylor's father and brother at a royal banquet, calling them filthy peasants and making their family the laughingstock of the nobles. Taylor is here for one thing, pure, unadulterated revenge. Taylor steps into the yard, giving a stiff, formal greeting, introducing himself as a trainee knight with one chain. Adrian leans on his sword, looking completely bored. Why all the formality for a simple training match? Besides, you look way too weak to be a real knight. Taylor's face turns red. He's about to absolutely explode until a firm, commanding voice echoes across the yard. Count Balerhard steps forward. Taylor instantly freezes. He is standing in front of the legendary Northern Commander. All of his anger evaporates into fanboy awe, and he bows deeply, saying it is the honor of a lifetime to meet the Count. Adrian rolls his eyes. Geez, you'd think my uncle was the actual prince here. The uncle ignores the sass and orders both combatants to take their positions. The match officially begins. Taylor instantly activates his blazing blue mana chain aura. He rushes forward, screaming a warning before leaping high into the air to deliver a devastating downward strike. Adrian doesn't even flinch. He stands perfectly still. Time seems to slow down as he watches Taylor's approach. With his supernatural experience, he notices a dozen completely unnecessary, wasted movements in the boy's form. With a casual flick of his wrist, Adrian parries the massive blow with terrifying ease.
Taylor is physically thrown backward by the sheer force of the parry. He stumbles in the dirt, completely bewildered. His brain short circuits. How? How did a primitive mana heart just effortlessly repel his advanced mana chain? It should be physically impossible. Adrian smiles mockingly. Maybe it's because your chain is merely a single ring? Honestly, that felt like nothing more than a slight sting. Taylor is paralyzed with shock, but off to the side, the knights, and especially the uncle, are staring wide-eyed at Adrian's blade. They hear a strange, high-pitched, resonant ringing coming from the steel. Count Balerhard narrows his eyes with extreme intensity. He recognizes that sound immediately. It is an incredibly rare, legendary phenomenon known as the Sword's Cry. The dragon awakens. Back in the training yard, Taylor Talheim is completely losing his mind. He just watched his advanced mana chain get effortlessly swatted away by a basic mana heart. Impossible! He screams, and in a desperate, angry frenzy, he charges at Adrian again. The two swords clash violently. Clang! Clang! Taylor launches a furious barrage of swift, heavy strikes, actually forcing Adrian to step back and play defense. The violent impact of their colliding energies creates a burst of light that physically pushes them apart. Taylor is left gasping for air, completely breathless. But Adrian isn't doing much better. He clutches his chest. He finally understands the core difference. The energy of a mana chain is the complete opposite of a mana heart. The conflicting energies from their clash are causing the mana inside his own heart to violently churn, threatening to flow in reverse and destroy him. Despite the agonizing danger, Adrian looks up at Taylor with a calm smile. Calm your soul a little, he advises. Then, Adrian closes his eyes. He fully concentrates his senses, imagining his consciousness sinking into the depths of a dark, calm ocean. Deep within his soul, he reaches out to his past. He issues a call to awaken his true, latent power, the power of the sword. He summons the essence of his soul, manifesting it in the form of a massive, roaring, great dragon. As his internal hand touches that power, system messages flood his vision. The mana heart has accepted an immense will. The dormant will of the Dragon Slayer has awakened. A terrifying, violently powerful red aura erupts around the prince. This isn't just basic mana anymore. This is the embodiment of his most active memory as a weapon. This is the essence of a heart refined for one single purpose: slaying dragons. When Adrian opens his eyes, they are glowing a piercing, deep crimson. He is completely enveloped in the red dragon aura. Taylor watches this transformation in absolute horror, his whole body trembling at the sheer, suffocating pressure of this terrifying power. On the sidelines, Count Balerhard's eyes go wide. "Stop!" he screams at the top of his lungs. "Stop immediately!" But Adrian, his eyes glowing red and radiating pure killing intent, ignores the order. He raises his sword, preparing to deliver a devastating, lethal strike. The Count screams again, panic in his voice, but Adrian continues the offensive movement. The Count suddenly remembers Adrian's exact words before the duel. "If at any moment it appears I am about to kill my opponent, you must stop me." Realizing the terrifying danger of that red aura, the Count explodes with his own massive blue aura. He intercepts Adrian at the absolute last microsecond. The Count's overwhelming fourth chain power collides directly with Adrian's devastating strike. The sheer force of the impact easily overpowers the prince. Adrian is sent flying backward like a ragdoll, crashing hard into a stone wall and collapsing amidst the rubble. The royal guards immediately draw their swords and rush forward, screaming at the Count. "What are you doing? Attacking a member of the royal family is a severe crime." "Stop," Adrian groans, his voice strained. He pushes himself up slightly, wiping a stream of blood from his mouth. I told him to do it, though I didn't ask you to throw me into a wall with such force, uncle." And with that, Adrian completely loses consciousness. The aftermath and the uncle's respect. Later, Adrian wakes up in his bed. He immediately checks his internal energy and gasps in shock. His mana heart is covered in hairline fractures. The sheer force of the Count's blow almost completely shattered it. He realizes just how massive the gap in power is between a one-chain knight and his uncle, but he smiles. There is no permanent damage, and he technically won the duel. "What are you smiling about?" Adrian jumps. Count Balerhard is standing in the room, looking furious. He angrily scolds Adrian for using such a corrupt, ominous, and violent technique. "I never taught you such a cursed style." Adrian looks his uncle in the eye. "I remained faithful to the essence of the blade." The Count internally scoffs, thinking that anyone who talks about the essence of the blade has never been in a real fight. But the Count pauses. He realizes exactly what that red essence actually was. It was pure, unadulterated killing intent. The Count's angry expression softens into a slight smirk. He doesn't preach about noble sword mastery or honor. Instead, he speaks as a veteran. "I am not a knight, boy.
I am a soldier. I follow a path that is not necessarily righteous, but a path that leads to victory. He acknowledges that killing intent is a crude, disturbing style, but it is a genuine truth in the world of combat. But the Count's face grows serious. Your sword is excessively powerful, but if that bloodlust grows too great, it will blind you to friend and foe alike. Adrian smiles cleverly. That is exactly why I asked you to stop me, to fix this flaw. The Count accepts the challenge. He agrees to keep refereeing the matches, strictly to see if his nephew can conquer his inner demon, or if he will be devoured by it. The rumor mill. For 3 grueling days, Adrian continues to duel Taylor Talheim. Finally, the training sessions end. Adrian looks at the exhausted Taylor and actually praises him. Enduring a blade charged with unrestrained, draconic killing intent for 3 straight days is absolute torture. It must be frustrating that you couldn't defeat me even once, Adrian teases gently. Taylor stammers, confused by the sudden shift in tone. Adrian waves over a maid, who brings forward an ornate wooden box. Adrian hands it to Taylor. He apologizes for the unforgivable insults he hurled at Taylor's family in the past. Inside the box is a formal letter of apology and a stuffed teddy bear. As Taylor leaves, shouting his thanks, Adrian thinks to himself, he isn't obligated to clean up the dead prince's messes, but he believes in paying a fair price, and he needs these rumors handled. And oh, the kingdom is buzzing with rumors. Everyone expected the arrogant prince to be publicly humiliated and beaten to a pulp in these duels. They waited for the scandal, but days pass and nothing happens. Instead, something bizarre occurs. The nobles who dueled Adrian actually start defending him. They publicly state that the prince isn't as bad as the rumors claim, and that they had honorable matches. The high society is completely confused. The nobles assume the royal palace must be using its power to forcibly silence the prince's opponents. When Adrian hears this, he slams his fist on a table. He runs out and starts shouting at everyone, claiming his opponents are only staying quiet because they are deeply embarrassed that they lost to him. He calls the nobles helpless and useless. His uncle steps up behind him and smirks. You are the last person who has the right to talk about being helpless. But the truth is hilarious. Adrian was actually threatening his defeated opponents, forcing them to spread rumors of his victory. He thought it would make him look strong, but instead, it backfired entirely. The new rumor is that he threatened them to falsify the duel results. Realizing he can't control the gossip mill, Adrian gives up on PR entirely and goes back to focusing purely on his brutal training. The final challenger. Eventually, the training rounds come to an end. Adrian is drenched in sweat, having tirelessly refined his movements. He turns to his knight, Kars, and asks how many opponents are left on the list. Kars smiles. Today's opponent is the absolute last. He explains that the other trainees are too terrified to challenge him now, but the final opponent? She is different. She is a true female knight who didn't just learn her family's martial arts, but actually joined a professional knight squad to refine her skills. We cut to the palace gates. The guards are staring in absolute awe at the woman walking through. She is wearing armor engraved with the emblem of the Iron Lion Squad. Her name is Erin Kieran. She is famously known by titles like the Flower on the Cliff and the Rose with Thorns. It's said she breaks the hearts of all men. The guards are stunned by her breathtaking beauty, wondering why someone so elite and gorgeous would come here alone. They mutter among themselves, guessing that the first prince must have incredible influence to attract her attention. The Flower on the Cliff. As Erin Kieran walks confidently toward the training yard, the palace guards are whispering excitedly among themselves. The Iron Lion Squad she belongs to is arguably the strongest, most prestigious knight squad in the entire kingdom. And Erin isn't just a trainee, she is a prodigy, whose official membership is basically already confirmed. The guards are practically placing bets, buzzing about how amazing it would be if this beautiful, elite knight publicly humiliated the hated prince. Up in the yard, Adrian watches her approach. He is genuinely puzzled. Why would a knight with such obvious high-tier talent seek out a duel with him? He leans over to his personal knight, Kars. Why is she here? Kars nervously clears his throat and mentions that there was a slight misunderstanding between the prince and Erin in the past. Adrian immediately assumes his past self started a stupid fight. He waves over a trembling maid and demands to know what the old Adrian did. The maid hesitantly squeaks out that the prince had gravely insulted Erin. Adrian rubs his temples, absolutely furious at the sheer stupidity of the body's previous owner. Suddenly, a murky memory flashes in his mind. He sees the old fat prince approaching Aaron with a sleazy smirk, arrogant and entitled. The old Adrian actually offered her the honor of becoming his personal private maid, but Aaron, cold as ice, flatly refused him. She reminded the bloated prince that the royal knight squads are not his personal property. In the memory, the old Adrian throws a massive tantrum, screaming at her and calling her an ugly thing in front of everyone. Coming back to the present, our reincarnated Adrian is just baffled. He looks at Aaron's breathtaking features. Ugly? It was physically impossible for anyone with working eyes to look at Aaron Kieran and call her ugly. It was just the pathetic lashing out of a rejected, corrupt scoundrel. Aaron steps up and gives a stiff, perfectly executed bow. "You haven't changed at all, Your Highness," she says, her voice dripping with subtle disdain. Adrian just smiles internally. If only you knew. He has changed so drastically that his very soul is different, but he knows he can't say that. He accepts that this entire hostile situation is the unavoidable karma of his past actions. The duel begins. Make way! Count Balorhard arrives to referee. The moment he sees Aaron, his eyes widen in recognition. Aaron steps forward and formally introduces herself as a trainee of the Iron Lions. The Count completely ignores his own nephew. He leans in and speaks directly to Aaron. "Be careful," he warns her seriously. "The prince's sword is extremely poisonous." "Hey!" Adrian shouts, throwing his arms up. "Isn't the referee supposed to be unbiased?" The Count ignores the complaint and barks the order for them to take their positions. The duel officially begins. Adrian smiles, intending to calmly test the skills of this famous prodigy. But Aaron doesn't hold back. She instantly erupts in a blazing blue aura and launches a lightning-fast, lethal attack. Clash. Adrian's eyes widen. He watches her footwork and blade trajectory with his ancient, expert eye. She is brilliant. He casually parries the strike, but the sheer force of her attack is heavy. As their swords lock in a violent barrage of precise strikes, Adrian feels that agonizing pain again. His mana heart is churning, desperately trying to flow in reverse against her conflicting mana chain energy. Despite her fierce, relentless assault, Adrian realizes she is slowly being drawn into his rhythm. He decides it's time to end the warm-up. A violent, suffocating red aura explodes around Adrian. Aaron's face goes pale. She can physically feel the immense, terrifying pressure radiating off of him. Their swords collide again, but this time, there is a massive explosion of red energy. The sheer kinetic force sends Aaron skidding backward through the dirt. She struggles to keep her balance, her mind racing. What kind of monstrous sword technique is this? Adrian smirks. He realizes that not all one-chain knights are created equal. Aaron is leagues above the scum he fought before. Suddenly, Adrian's vision flashes. A highly detailed, glowing window pops up right next to Aaron's head. It lists her stats, her hidden talents, and multiple personality traits. Adrian literally spits in the dirt, amazed. He knows the rules of his old judgment skill. He can only see the full stats of someone who is either weaker than him or exactly equal in strength. "All right," Adrian announces, pointing his glowing red blade at her. The real duel starts now. He rushes her. The fight devolves into an absolute war of attrition. They clash tirelessly, tearing up the courtyard until the sun physically begins to set. Both of them are bruised, battered, and gasping for air. "Stop!" The Count steps between them. "It's too late. The duel is suspended until tomorrow. Go receive treatment immediately." "I was just about to finish this," Adrian complains. Aaron glares right back at him. "I was about to do the same." As the healers rush in, Aaron walks away into the sunset. She makes a silent, ironclad vow in her heart. "I will never allow myself to be defeated." The bet. The brutal duel stretches on for 3 consecutive days. There is no clear winner in sight. The observing knights are absolutely flabbergasted. They knew Aaron was a genius, but seeing the famously lazy, talentless first prince match her blow for blow is completely shattering their reality. On the morning of the 4th day, before they cross swords, Adrian holds up a hand. "Wait, I have something to say." Aaron glares at him, assuming he is going to offer a cowardly apology to stop the fight. "I will not accept any apologies, Your Highness." "I'm not apologizing," Adrian says, leaning on his sword. "I understand you want to reclaim your wounded pride, but my purpose is different. Since we are fighting this fiercely, let's make it interesting. Let's make a bet." The crowd gasps. Adrian points at her. "The loser has to fulfill one single wish for the winner, and if I lose, I will get on my knees and publicly apologize to you." The royal knights immediately step forward, furious. "Your Highness, retract those words. It is completely unbecoming of a royal to kneel." "Stay back," Adrian barks, his voice echoing with absolute authority. He looks back at Aaron. "What do you say?" Aaron hesitates for only a second before a confident, razor-sharp smile crosses her face. "If your Highness allows it, I believe I am more than qualified to claim that prize." The climax and the prize. "Don't go back on your word," Adrian warns, and then he explodes. Adrian unleashes an immense, terrifying level of power that he hadn't shown in the previous 3 days. His eyes glow a blinding red. A massive, suffocating, ominous aura erupts, and for a split second, the terrifying, spectral image of a giant red dragon manifests in the air behind him. Aaron is completely stunned by his sudden, explosive speed. He was holding back this entire time. Adrian launches a devastating, crushing series of heavy attacks. Aaron's perfect defenses completely shatter under the overwhelming weight of his blows. The ground beneath them literally cracks and craters from the sheer kinetic force of the strikes. Adrian leaps into the air and brings his sword down for the final, decisive blow. Crash! A dead, heavy silence falls over the training yard. As the thick dust slowly clears, Erin Kieran is kneeling in the dirt, her sword cast aside. She is completely, utterly defeated. She stares at the ground, unable to even process the reality of her loss. Adrian stands tall over her. The red aura fades. "I win the bet," he announces softly, but loud enough for everyone to hear. He leans in and drops the bombshell. "And for my prize, I want you." Aaron's head snaps up in absolute, horrified shock. The entire crowd of knights gasps loudly. Off to the side, Adrian's knight, Kars, is having an existential crisis. Over the past month, Kars had watched this prince train with suicidal dedication, even in the middle of a lightning storm. Kars truly believed Adrian was destined for greatness, but hearing the prince suddenly demand a woman as a prize, Kars feels sick, wondering if the prince really is just the corrupt scoundrel everyone says he is. Aaron glares up at Adrian, her eyes burning with humiliated rage. "Is this truly your real desire, your highness?" she spits. Adrian looks down at her and bursts out laughing. "Of course I don't want you in your current state. In my eyes right now, you are nothing but an ordinary trainee knight who couldn't even manage to defeat the outcast prince. What I truly desire is your potential. I want the future of the knight named Aaron Kieran." He looks her dead in the eyes and explains his philosophy. He doesn't want a knight who only stands by his side because some stuffy royal order forced them to. He wants a knight who follows him of their own free will. He wants a knight who belongs to him alone. "I see true, unparalleled talent in your sword," Adrian says softly. "I am inviting you to become my knight." Aaron is stunned into silence. She thinks back on her past. She had fought tooth and nail to achieve her dream of becoming a knight, but the reality was bitter. Because of her breathtaking, delicate beauty, no one ever treated her like a real warrior. Her male colleagues always saw her as just a pretty face, or a fragile lady who needed protecting. It drove her to train with a cruelty and intensity that exceeded everyone else, allowing her to easily crush all the other trainees in individual duels. Yet still, she was never respected as a true knight. And now, the most hated, talentless prince in the kingdom is looking at her, completely ignoring her appearance and praising her potential and her sword. Aaron looks up at him, her eyes shining with renewed resolve. "I have one condition," she says firmly. "You must promise to treat me as a knight, not as a woman. If you do that, I will follow your will." Adrian doesn't even hesitate. "I accept your promise." Right there in the dirt, as the sun dips below the horizon, Aaron Kieran kneels on one knee. She bows her head and formally declares her oath of loyalty to Prince Adrian Leonberg, swearing her sword and the rest of her life to his service. Kars and Count Balerhard watch in absolute, stunned silence. The oath is sealed. The rumors and the royal summons. Of course, it doesn't take long for the high society to completely ruin the moment. The other nobles simply cannot comprehend why a generational prodigy like Aaron would ever swear loyalty to the rogue prince. So, they invent their own reality. Disgusting rumors begin to spread like wildfire. The nobles whisper that there must be a secret, illicit relationship between them. They claim the prince is just hiding his desire to take Aaron as a mistress under the guise of a knight's oath. When Adrian hears this, he is absolutely incensed. He paces his room, shouting at the walls. How am I still the villain and the scum in everyone's eyes? His tantrum is interrupted by his personal knight, Kars, who is standing quietly by the door. Kars clears his throat. "Your Highness, I have a a question about what you said the other day, about wanting a knight who doesn't serve you by royal order. Adrian understands immediately. He looks at Kars. It was the truth. If the king issued a royal order for you to leave my side tomorrow, you would go without hesitation, wouldn't you? Kars stays silent, proving the point. Adrian smiles mischievously. But if the need ever arises, you are always welcome to swear a true oath of loyalty to me, Kars. Kars blinks, genuinely surprised. Would you actually accept my oath if I did, Your Highness? No, Adrian answers instantly. You're not fun to train with. Kars just stares at him, completely baffled. Adrian thinks to himself, I'm not even joking. Suddenly, a royal messenger arrives, bearing an official decree. Adrian's mandatory confinement period has been officially lifted, a full month and a half early. He is now allowed to freely leave his palace and attend the upcoming royal banquet. Adrian is genuinely puzzled. I truly don't understand what that man, the king, is thinking. They locked me in here like they never wanted to see my face again, and now they're letting me out early? Kars asks if the prince is happy about the news. Adrian just shrugs with total indifference. Even if I leave the palace, I have absolutely nowhere to go and no one I want to see.
The invitation. Later, a maid is organizing some papers on his desk. She accidentally drops an elegant, wax-sealed envelope. It's an invitation addressed to His Highness. Adrian opens it. It's an invitation to a social club dedicated to young nobles. He asks the maid if it's a strange place. The maid turns bright red and stammers hesitantly. She hints that the refined pleasures of the young nobles cannot be understood by women, which is polite maid speak for it's a degenerate club for drinking and chasing women. Adrian rolls his eyes. He has zero interest in the old prince's sleazy hobbies. He's about to toss the invitation into the fire, planning to use training as an excuse not to go. But then, his eyes catch the sender's name at the bottom of the card, Bernardo of the Eli family. Adrian freezes. The Eli family? That is the exact same family his uncle mentioned. The family that stubbornly stuck to the ancient mana heart technique and supposedly fell to ruin a century ago. Adrian's mind is made up instantly. Prepare the carriage, he orders the maid. He has to go. He desperately hopes that the descendants of his old technique aren't in a completely miserable state. Adrian summons the royal tailor to design new clothes for the upcoming banquet. The tailor takes one look at the prince and his jaw practically hits the floor. Adrian has lost a massive amount of weight. His measurements have decreased by more than half. He is no longer the bloated, morbidly obese pig he used to be. Adrian orders a simple, elegant black outfit with very few decorations. When the tailor asks about measuring him for the actual royal banquet attire, Adrian just gives a cocky smile. Wait a bit before starting on that one. My measurements will definitely change again by then. Ghosts of the past. A few days later, Adrian is riding in his luxurious carriage toward the social club. He sighs heavily, leaning his head against the window. Being a prince is exhausting. The restrictive clothes, the bumpy carriage, the constant guards. It's unbearable. As he grumbles, his eyes drift to the maid sitting quietly across from him. He notices a jagged, ugly old scar on her neck. The maid catches him staring and immediately bows her head, terrified. I was the one at fault, Your Highness. What happened was something I deserved to be scolded for. Adrian realizes with a sinking feeling that this is just another dark, distorted legacy of the old prince's violent cruelty. He looks at the terrified girl. Despite seeing her every day for months, he realizes he doesn't even know her name. What is your name? He asks gently. Adelia, Your Highness. Adelia Byron. Adrian's eyes snap wide open. Byron? That name triggers a massive, ancient memory from his time as a sword. He remembers a time long before kingdoms or cities existed, a time when weak humans were easy prey, constantly slaughtered and looted by terrifying monsters and other races. But then, the saviors appeared, the 5 heroes. They fought a long, apocalyptic war to make humans the dominant race. And among those 5 heroes was a great, unstoppable warrior who wielded him. She was known as the Iron-Blooded Sword Marchioness. Her real name? Agnes Byron. Adrian remembers being held in Agnes's hands as she boldly charged a horde of massive giants. With a single, devastating swing, she decapitated Ida, the king of the giants, ending their reign of terror forever. He remembers Agnes standing victoriously over the giant's massive corpse, screaming in raw, furious hatred, calling them savage scoundrels who only knew how to loot and destroy. The memory fades. Adrian looks back at the timid, scarred maid sitting across from him. How could the direct descendant of the legendary, giant-slaying heroine Agnes Byron end up as a miserable, abused servant? Before he can ask, Kars knocks on the carriage door. We have arrived, Your Highness. Adrian steps out, but looks back at Adelia. We are going to speak later, he tells her, leaving the poor girl in a state of absolute anxiety. The degenerate heir. As Adrian steps up to the social club, a young man with striking white hair runs up to him with extreme, almost aggressive enthusiasm. Your Highness, the prince! The young man cheers loudly. He
bows deeply. I am Bernardo of the Eli family. I am overwhelmingly happy to see you safe and well. Adrian looks the kid up and down. This is the descendant of the Eli family? The preservers of the Monoheart? The kid looks like an absolute reckless, degenerate party boy. Bernardo looks closely at Adrian. You look so frail, Your Highness. You must have suffered so much during your confinement. Adrian just stares at the overly enthusiastic noble and gives a slow, cunning smile that completely confuses the young man. This is going to be an interesting party. He places a heavy hand on the young noble's shoulder, giving him a deeply confident, almost menacing smile. Thanks to you, Bernardo. Today is going to be very fun. Bernardo is left standing there, completely puzzled by the chilling undertone of the prince's voice. They walk into the main hall of the social club, and the scene is exactly as terrible as Adrian expected. The room is incredibly noisy. Young, wealthy nobles are lounging around, heavily drinking, aggressively flirting with women, and laughing obnoxiously. Bernardo watches Adrian carefully. Something is definitely wrong. Adrian is sitting quietly in a high-backed chair, holding a single glass of untouched liquor, his eyes scanning the room with a cold, calculating, predatory aura. He feels like a completely different person. Suddenly, one of the drunker nobles swaggers over to Adrian's table. He leans in with a sleazy, conspiratorial grin. Your Highness, I heard the rumors. I heard you actually managed to pluck the flower of the Iron Lion. Adrian's eyes narrow, but he stays silent. The noble takes a swig of his drink and sighs with exaggerated regret. Man, I was one step too late. I've been trying to get my hands on that knightess for months. I really wish I had gotten her oath of loyalty first. The noble laughs vulgarly. She is so incredibly beautiful, even when she's strapped up in that bulky armor. I mean, I just can't help but imagine the magnificence of her naked. You there, Adrian cuts him off. The words are spoken softly, but they carry enough freezing pressure to silence the immediate area. The noble blinks, confused. Yes, Your Highness? Adrian looks at him with dead, shark-like eyes. Do you have a younger brother or sister at home? The noble shifts uncomfortably, completely thrown off by the random question. Yes, Your Highness. I have a younger brother. Why? A terrifying, chilling smile spreads across Adrian's face. That is very fortunate. Bam! Without a single microsecond of warning, Adrian launches out of his chair and delivers a devastating, full-power punch directly into the noble's face. The sickening crack of breaking bone echoes through the hall. The noble is instantly knocked off his feet, collapsing hard onto the marble floor as blood explodes from his shattered nose. The women in the hall immediately start screaming in absolute terror. Total chaos erupts. The music stops, glasses shatter, and Bernardo falls backward, trembling in shock. Adrian steps forward, looming over the bleeding, groaning noble. He looks down with absolute glacial coldness. It is very fortunate, Adrian whispers chillingly, because your family's lineage will not be cut off. Crack! Adrian delivers a violent, brutal kick straight into the noble's ribs. The man howls in agony, increasing the panic in the room. Adrian stands over the broken man, his voice echoing through the dead silent, terrified hall. From now on, your younger brother will be the family heir. The noble tries to crawl away, crying and begging to know why he is being attacked. Adrian grabs him by the collar of his expensive shirt and hauls him halfway off the floor. Listen to me very well, Adrian hisses, his tone dripping with ancient, draconic authority. I can tolerate the idea of being seen as a scoundrel, but I will never tolerate being treated as one. The other nobles in the room are paralyzed. They have absolutely no idea what his cryptic words mean. All they know is that the prince has completely snapped. Seeing that the bloody noble still looks confused, Adrian decides the lesson hasn't quite landed yet. He rains down another violent, merciless punch, knocking the man completely unconscious. Adrian drops the limp body back onto the floor and stands up amidst the absolute chaos he just created. His knuckles are bruised and a few drops of blood stain his cheek. Bernardo! Adrian barks. The white-haired noble scrambles across the floor, practically sliding on his knees to submissively bow before the prince, visibly shaking with fear. Adrian wipes the blood off his face, offering Bernardo a dark, distorted smile. I told you earlier, didn't I? Today is going to be very fun. Bernardo gulps. Yes, Your Highness. What are your orders? Go and summon the royal court knights, immediately. Bernardo doesn't hesitate for a second. He scrambles to his feet and sprints out the door, leaving Adrian standing alone in a room full of panic-stricken, trapped nobles. The cleanup. All women leave the hall immediately, Adrian orders. The women don't need to be told twice. They scramble out the doors to safety. The remaining nobles look at each other with extreme caution. One brave, or incredibly stupid, noble tries to quietly slip out the door alongside the women. Adrian's voice cuts through through the room like a whip. "I said only women leave." He turns to the noble trying to escape and flashes a mocking, dangerous smile. "You can leave if you want to, but if you step through that door, you will leave this place as a woman." The noble lets out a pathetic squeak of terror, remembering the bloody, unconscious man on the floor, and immediately scurries back into the room. Adrian slowly walks through the room, glaring at the terrified aristocrats. He scolds them with ancient fury. "You show not the slightest degree of respect. Not a single one of you knelt when the Prince of the Kingdom walked into the room. You didn't stop at mocking me to my face. You dared to openly insult my knight." Just then, the heavy, armored footsteps of the royal court knights echo into the hall. They take one look at the bloody scene and stand at attention. Adrian looks at the knight captain. "Tell me, Captain, what charges can be filed in a case like this?" The knight captain answers loudly, ensuring every noble hears it. "Your Highness, since they have openly belittled a member of the royal family, that constitutes a direct insult to the crown. Daring to undermine the crown's authority is considered high treason." The nobles collectively go pale. High treason is a death sentence. "Very well," the captain says, drawing his sword. "Which of these men do you wish to be subdued, Your Highness?" Adrian looks around the room, making eye contact with every single terrified noble. He answers with a sharp, glacial calmness. "All of them." The king's audience. Later that evening, Adrian is summoned directly to the throne room. King Leonberg is sitting high above, looking down at his son with absolute freezing coldness. "You caused a massive stir the second your confinement ended," the king scolds him harshly. 14 young men from noble families have been dragged away in chains. You directed every possible charge at them, from insulting the royal family to high treason. The king leans forward, his voice heavy with political weight. "Do you realize the magnitude of your deed? Yes, by royal authority, they must be punished. But you cannot simply ignore the massive political backlash of angering 14 powerful noble families at once." Adrian doesn't flinch. He actually smiles mockingly at his father. "Are you really worried about their family's reactions, father?" Adrian steps forward. Those young men were the absolute dregs of the social club. They are outcasts within their own families, hopeless failures and degenerate scoundrels. Their continued existence brings nothing but shame to their houses. Adrian leans in. "I suggest you send letters to their estates, but don't address them to the fathers. Send them to the siblings of the scoundrels I imprisoned. They are the ones who can handle these internal family problems better than anyone else." The king is completely silenced. He realizes his supposedly idiotic son just executed a brilliant, ruthless political purge that actually benefits the crown. Finding no flaw in the logic, the king orders everyone to leave. As Adrian walks out of the throne room, he smirks to himself. He actually managed to shut the old man up. The mad descendant. Later, Adrian is back in his private quarters. He is sitting across from the scarred maid, Adelia Byron. She is absolutely terrified, openly weeping and shaking, terrified of what the tyrant prince might do to her. He looks at her and reflects on the tragedy of the Byron family. Their glorious world-saving history was completely erased. Their incomparable martial arts were severed and lost. The towering pride of the iron-blooded sword marchioness vanished without a single trace. Curious, Adrian activates his authority of judgment to look at her stats. The glowing window pops up and Adrian's jaw drops. Adelia Byron possesses first-class talent in swordsmanship and high mana sensitivity. She is a literal prodigy. But then he looks at her traits and his brain short circuits. They are incredibly bizarre and entirely contradictory. Adrian holds his head in his hands, completely stressed out. He analyzes the traits. Means she will literally lose her mind and go berserk at the sight of blood. Makes her obsessed with fighting. Yet she is, and she possesses the unparalleled talent of the ancient heroes, but she completely lacks any mental trait to control her own madness. If he trains her, is it truly right to unleash this chaotic, bloodthirsty, soft-hearted berserker upon the world? But he makes a decision. She is a first-class talent. He cannot ignore that, and luckily, he spots the loophole. The trait. This trait means the possessor finds overwhelming, genuine happiness in serving a master to whom they dedicate all their loyalty. Adrian stands up, towering over the weeping maid. "Adelia Byron, I order you to swear an oath of loyalty to me." Adelia stops crying and looks up, completely shocked. I don't quite understand your meaning, Your Highness." "It means you are going to become my knight," Adrian insists, "and I want you to swear it immediately." Adelia collapses advances forward, pressing her forehead to the floor, begging him, "Please, Your Highness, this matter is far greater than my ability to bear. My family is worthless." "You are the one who called your family worthless, not me," Adrian says firmly. "I will make you a promise right now. I will personally take full responsibility for the Byron family. I will restore your name, but in return, you must swear your absolute loyalty to me. You must serve me as your master." Internally, Adrian vows that if she ever loses control of her berserker madness, he will take it upon himself to physically restrain her. Adelia looks up, tears in her eyes. Will you truly keep your promise? Will you take responsibility for my family?" "Yes," Adrian answers without a single microsecond of hesitation. In the middle of his private quarters, Adelia kneels. She formally announces her oath of loyalty to Prince Adrian Leonberg, not just as a maid, but as the eldest daughter of the Byron family. She swears to serve him and dedicate her entire life to him as her master. Adrian places a heavy, reassuring hand on her head, officially accepting her oath. From now on, he orders her, "You must obey my orders without question." "I will, Your Highness," she confirms, a look of pure, genuine happiness washing over her face. Adrian removes his hand and sighs internally, wondering if he just made a massive mistake by recruiting a literal berserker. The rumor mill spins out of control. It doesn't take long for the palace rumor mill to completely lose its mind. The gossips go into absolute overdrive. The nobles whisper that the first prince has officially returned to his old, tyrannical ways. The rumors claim he is actively forcing people to swear loyalty to him through despicable, evil schemes. Adrian is sitting in his room absolutely livid. "Since when has everyone become this insanely interested in my personal affairs?" he shouts at the wall. He drops his head into his hands, completely drained. He complains to his knight, Kars. "I only appointed one direct knight, yet everyone hasn't stopped talking about it since sunrise." Adrian vividly imagines the reactions of his family. He pictures his father, the king, sitting on the throne with a massive migraine, trying to fix the political disasters his son caused while supposedly indulging in a harem. He pictures his uncle, Count Balorhard, shaking his head and calling him a pathetic fool, assuming Adrian completely abandoned their bet. And he pictures his arrogant younger brother, Jillian, mockingly laughing that appointing a maid as a knight is something that suits the trash prince perfectly. Why do these rumors spread with such insane speed? Adrian wonders aloud. Suddenly, a maid cracks open the door. "Your Highness, the queen has arrived." Adrian practically explodes. "Are you kidding me?" He deeply resents this completely unwanted visit. The queen sweeps into the room, looking absolutely heartbroken. She confronts him, expressing her deep disappointment. "I truly believed you had turned over a new leaf, Adrian, but it seems you intend to return to your shameful old ways." But then, the queen pauses. She mutters to herself that maybe this scandalous situation is actually for the best. Adrian blinks. "I don't understand your meaning, mother." The queen's face suddenly lights up with terrifying enthusiasm. "Marriage! Marriage and stability will finally put an end to your reckless behavior. I have made a decision. This time, I will personally take it upon myself to find a suitable wife for you. Just trust me." Adrian is completely stunned into silence by his mother's sheer insistence. He just stares at the wall as she leaves, feeling like he no longer understands anything that is happening around him. The inheritance of the Sword Queen. Later that evening, Adelia is sitting nervously in front of him. "Your Highness," she asks hesitantly, "does my oath of loyalty mean I will now possess what is called mana?" Adrian smiles. "Yes, but you will possess a very, very special type of it." Adrian closes his eyes and holds out his hands. He begins gathering pure, glowing blue mana energy between his palms. "The world has completely forgotten the Sword Queen," Adrian explains softly, his voice echoing with ancient reverence. "But I have forgotten nothing. I haven't forgotten the traces she left behind. I haven't forgotten the way the sword used to dance between her fingertips, and I have never forgotten the sound of her heart, a heart that beat with pure heroism and courage." Adrian pushes his hands forward, physically transferring that condensed ancient energy directly into Adelia's chest. System messages instantly flood Adrian's vision. Mana discovered within target. Mana implantation process successful. Energy stabilized. Adelia's eyes suddenly flash with power. Mana heart successfully created. Adelia looks down at her hands. A beautiful, radiant golden aura is swirling around her entire body. She is in a state of absolute awe. Is this truly mana? "That was the method of refining the mana heart," Adrian says, his voice suddenly incredibly weak. "Practice it whenever you have the chance." Without warning, Adrian slumps forward, completely drained. Adelia rushes forward, her face full of concern. "Your Highness, are you all right?" Adrian is mentally reeling. "How did I reach the point of total physical exhaustion just from forming one single mana heart?" I'm just a little tired," he reassures her. Adelia looks at him with tears in her eyes. "How could could you exert all this effort for a humble person like me? Forget it, just leave, Adrian orders. But Adelia doesn't leave. She stands up, looks at him with a strange, incredibly intense gaze, and bows deeply. I will serve you with all my loyalty for the rest of my life, master. Adrian smiles weakly. I'm glad you remember who your master is, but internally, he is terrified he might actually forget how dangerous she is.
A few days pass. Kars enters Adrian's room to deliver an update on the social club incident. The royal guard is currently holding the white-haired noble Bernardo of the Eli family in protective custody as the primary witness before the trial. Kars reassures Adrian that members of the royal family never have to stand on the witness stand, so he won't have to attend. Adrian feels relieved, but mutters that holding a full trial is a massive exaggeration. Adrian turns his attention to Adelia, who is quietly polishing a silver cup nearby. How is your condition recently? Adelia blinks. My condition, your highness? Your mana heart, has it stabilized? Yes, master. Good, Adrian says, standing up. Set aside that cleaning cloth. You are a knight now. Change your clothes and meet me at the training ground. You are joining my training. Out in the training yard, Adrian is doing some light warm-up stretches. What do you think you're doing? Adrian turns around. It's his uncle, Count Balorhard, marching toward him looking furious. The Count points a thick finger across the yard. I don't mean you, I mean her. Adrian looks over. Adelia is currently running laps around the dirt arena, completely decked out in heavy knight armor. Haven't you heard the rumors, uncle? Adrian asks innocently. I'm making a knight out of her. The Count absolutely explodes. Do knights look like a joke to you? How can you act this recklessly at a time like this? Adrian snaps right back. Why are you always interfering in my affairs? If you hate what I'm doing so much, why did you even bother coming here? Their screaming match is interrupted by Adelia running up to them, gasping for air. I have finished the 10 laps, master. Seeing the angry Count, Adelia immediately drops to her knees and apologizes profusely for causing a quarrel. Adrian sighs and reassures her it isn't her fault. He reaches over to the weapon rack and hands her a standard wooden training sword. Today, I will teach you some basic swordsmanship stances, Adrian says, stepping back. A blue aura flares up around him as he demonstrates a powerful, perfectly swift sword swing. Take the correct stance and then swing the sword exactly like this. Try it. Adelia grips the heavy wooden sword with both hands, still panting from her run. Like this, master? Suddenly, her eyes gleam with a fierce green spark. Whoosh! Adelia executes the exact same movement, but with absolute, terrifying perfection. A massive, violently powerful blue aura explodes from her blade. The sheer kinetic force of her swing literally cracks the solid ground beneath her feet. Count Balorhard's jaw drops. He stands there in extreme, paralyzed shock. Adrian is completely stunned. She mastered the movement perfectly just by watching it once? Adelia looks at Adrian, blinking innocently. Was my stance correct, master? Wait for a moment, Adrian stammers, stepping back as he tries to process what just happened. Pure terror suddenly grips Adrian's heart. If he neglects her training for even a single moment, she is inevitably going to completely surpass him. He remembers the horrifying details of her trait. It means she submits to the strong, not the weak. If she becomes stronger than him, her loyalty might completely reverse, and the berserker will be unleashed. Incredible, the Count whispers, his eyes glued to Adelia. The magnitude of her talent is astonishing. Adrian instantly steps between them, violently grabbing his uncle's arm. What are you doing? Don't you dare have any thoughts about her. The Count rips his arm away and smirks coldly. What could someone like you possibly offer a girl with this much talent? You're a beginner who hasn't held a sword for more than a few months. You cannot handle her immense potential. Adrian clenches his jaw. He knows the Count is right. His old friend, King Leonberg, possessed enough terrifying prestige to make this uncle back away trembling instantly. But Adrian isn't that man anymore. He's just a weak prince. But then, Adrian's ancient pride flares up. If I cannot handle her, no one can. He is the weapon that slayed the king of giants. He is the dragon of light. He drank the blood of countless legends. He is the magic sword Gruhorn. A violently powerful, suffocating red aura erupts around Adrian. He steps right up to his uncle, directing a searing, terrifying glare directly into the Count's eyes. She belongs to me, Adrian growls, his voice echoing with demonic authority. Do not look at her. Do not even covet her.
her. He truly hated it when someone tried to take what belonged to him. But suddenly, the red aura flickers. Adrian's sense of reality begins to violently fade. He is completely overwhelmed by a freezing, crushing feeling of darkness, as if he is drowning in the depths of a lifeless ocean. Adrian's vision violently swims. The terrifying red aura of the Dragon Slayer flickers and dies. His frail human body simply cannot handle the sheer, overwhelming weight of his ancient power. He feels his consciousness plunging into absolute darkness. He imagines himself falling into a bottomless abyss, staring down a raging, fiery monster imprisoned within his own inner world. It's exactly like Naruto sinking into his subconscious and nearly being devoured by the Nine-Tails' pure hatred. If he loses control now, his soul will be completely consumed by his own demonic sword essence, Gruhorn. But with a massive surge of willpower, Adrian reaches out his hand in the darkness, grasping a tiny spark of light emerging from the chaos. He forcefully yanks himself back to reality, panting heavily, sweat pouring down his face. When he opens his eyes, his uncle is standing there, practically vibrating with intense, militaristic fervor. Count Balarhard points at Adelia. An ordinary knight can save the lives of 10 soldiers, the Count shouts enthusiastically. A distinguished knight can save 100, but a girl with this level of talent, she could save the lives of 1,000 soldiers, perhaps more. Adrian watches his uncle closely. He realizes this isn't just a proud uncle speaking. This is the supreme commander of the northern border. The man who defends the kingdom from the monsters of the north is looking at Adelia and seeing the ultimate weapon of war. No, Adrian interrupts flatly. I completely refuse the idea. The Count explodes in anger. Do you not understand? We could save countless lives through her. Suddenly, Adelia steps forward. She stands with absolute dignity and unwavering steadfastness, placing her hand on her chest. My body and my soul already belong to His Highness the Prince, she announces clearly. I cannot obey your orders, Count. The Count is struck totally speechless. Adrian smiles a victorious, cunning smile. His gamble worked perfectly. Adrian turns to his uncle with glacial coldness. My goal from the beginning was just to lose weight, uncle. Do you even have anything left to teach me? He steps closer, delivering a final, absolute warning. If you want to continue visiting this palace, you will never interfere in my affairs again. The Count grinds his teeth, but finding absolutely no other choice, he reluctantly nods in agreement. True to his word, the Count stops interfering, but he can't stay away. He continues to visit the palace just to stand on the sidelines and watch Adelia train from afar. Adrian actually finds a special, petty pleasure in watching his uncle's towering pride slowly shatter day by day as he is forced to just stand there and observe. One day, while Adelia is swinging her wooden training sword, something impossible happens. The wooden blade suddenly hums and glows with a brilliant, blinding golden aura. Both Adrian and the Count physically recoil in shock. The Count instantly recognizes the phenomenon, while Adrian stares in utter disbelief. Did she seriously just master sword resonance already? Adrian claps enthusiastically, cheering her on, but internally, he is sweating bullets. At this insane rate of learning, she is absolutely going to surpass him in a matter of weeks. But the uncle isn't celebrating. He storms over to Adrian, his face purple with rage. Wait, did you teach her the mana heart technique? Yes, Adrian answers calmly. Is that a problem? Wasn't it enough that you learned such petty, trash tricks? The Count screams. She possesses potential beyond human imagination, and you just completely ruined everything. Adrian doesn't even blink. He turns to his knight. Cars, throw my uncle out. The Count furiously swats Cars away, announcing he'll leave on his own, and storms out of the training yard. Adelia lowers her glowing sword, looking at Adrian with deep concern. Master, are the techniques I learned truly just petty tricks? Adrian shakes his head, strongly denying it. My uncle simply doesn't know the truth. In this era, everyone has completely forgotten the true, devastating power of the original mana heart. He looks at the golden aura fading from her blade. If they remembered, they never would have abandoned it like an old, worn-out shoe. Do not worry, Adelia. You will soon discover its true power. A period of intensive, grueling training passes. Adrian is in the yard, completely surrounded by a dense blue aura, refining his sword movements. I thought you'd never return, Adrian comments without turning around. The Count steps into the yard, a heavy, intimidating presence radiating off of him. He is done watching. He is here to challenge the prince. I will use only one mana ring, the Count announces, his voice echoing across the courtyard. If you can force me to step back even half a step, I will acknowledge your worth. Adrian lowers his sword. And the prize for winning the bet? If you win, I will fulfill literally any wish you ask for. I will even teach you the deepest fighting secrets of our family. A cunning, wicked smile spreads across Adrian's face. That isn't what I want, but I will settle for it for now. Boom! Adrian rushes forward with all his might. He targets the Count's neck with a blindingly fast strike, but the Count is a veteran. He dodges the attack brilliantly, completely unfazed. Your blade is still as fierce as ever, nephew, he comments smoothly. Adrian doesn't stop. He launches a barrage of powerful, violent strikes, his face overflowing with pure determination and defiance. The two swords collide in a rapid, heavy clash. But no matter how hard Adrian swings, the Count dodges or parries with insulting ease. Surrounded by a terrifying blue aura, the Count looks at the struggling prince and smirks. Is this really all you have? With one powerful, casual flick of his wrist, the Count completely overcomes Adrian's guard and pushes him hard across the dirt. Have you given up already? The Count mocks. Adrian pushes himself back up, refusing to accept defeat. He knows the truth. His uncle's strength is completely overwhelming. The Count is intentionally stalling, waiting for Adrian to exhaust his mana so he can deliver a crushing, humiliating defeat to break the prince's spirit. At his current mana heart level, defeat is mathematically inevitable. But then, Adrian just smiles. The heroic martial epic. The Count frowns, bewildered by the prince's sudden smile. Adrian stands tall and points his sword at his uncle. 400 years ago, knights who used the mana heart achieved impossible accomplishments and conquered legendary monsters. Yet today, as soon as the mana chain appeared, those ancient techniques were treated like worthless junk. What is the meaning of this history lesson? The Count snaps. The weakness is not in the mana heart itself, Adrian explains, his eyes gleaming. The weakness is in the owner. Mana hearts are not all at the same level, Adrian smirks. Tell me, uncle, have you ever heard of the heroic martial epic? The Count scoffs with pure disdain. The battlefield is no place to talk about annoying songs and poetry, boy. Stop chattering. Do you need more time to catch your breath? No. Adrian's eyes suddenly ignite with a blinding, pure blue light. He raises his sword, and his voice begins to echo with a strange, magical resonance. He begins chanting a powerful, ancient spell. The path a knight takes becomes an accomplishment, and 100 victories are his pride and his strength. The Count freezes, struck with sudden astonishment as the very air pressure in the courtyard drops. System messages rapidly cascade across Adrian's vision. The engraved accomplishment has transformed into a created heroic martial epic. Epic of duels created. An absolute, towering pillar of dense blue aura erupts around Adrian. It is like he just unleashed his banquet. This is the true power of the mana heart, Adrian shouts over the roaring energy. The heroic martial epic. The Count grinds his teeth, refusing to be intimidated. He believes the result won't change. A mana chain will always cause a mana heart to flow in reverse. They clash again. Clang! Just as the Count predicted, the mana chain energy violently crashes into Adrian's sword, instantly causing the prince's mana to flow in reverse. Adrian grunts in agonizing pain, but he doesn't stop fighting. He pushes harder. Is the power of a soul stained with pain, Adrian roars. His aura ignites with unprecedented, explosive strength. Now that appearance is somewhat suitable, the Count admits, bracing his sword. The two swords collide with a shockwave that shatters the training yard, but this time, Adrian's blade doesn't bounce off. The clash continues in a high-speed blur of violent strikes, and for the first time, the first prince shows clear, overwhelming superiority. Under the crushing weight of Adrian's epic-infused strikes, the invincible commander of the north is actually forced to retreat. Adrian stands gasping, fighting for every breath as he tries to regain his balance. Despite his clear superiority in the clash, he realizes with a start that his uncle has held out for a surprisingly long time. I told you, uncle, Adrian says through gritted teeth. Mana hearts are not all the same. Arrogant brat, the Count roars, refusing to accept defeat. He launches himself into a fierce, desperate assault, forcing Adrian into a purely defensive stance. The collision of their energies triggers a massive explosion, filling the yard with thick, acrid smoke. The Count stands firm in the haze. Enough games, he announces, his voice booming with a soldier's respect. He praises Adrian's steadfastness as sufficient and excellent, but warns that he will only offer further praise while the prince is on his knees. Adrian feels the weight of the moment. He realizes that a normal rank martial epic isn't enough to cross the boundary. He looks at his uncle with disdain. You've all forgotten the magnitude of what you lost, Adrian declares. 400 years ago, the ancient knights made a fatal mistake. They killed every monster and left their descendants with no true enemies. Over time, the great techniques and the shining heroic epics were forgotten, replaced by boring stories of humans fighting humans. If you don't know the truth, Adrian growls, then I will teach you. I will teach you how to split dragon scales that no sword can penetrate. Ping! A system message flashes red. Current abilities cannot bear the burden of the epic. Adrian's skin begins to crack. Blood seeps from his pores as the immense pressure of the myth-rank hymn begins to crush his body. The system deletes multiple parts of the song just to save his life, leaving him with only a single, fragmented verse. Adrian ignores the pain and unleashes the power. Red and blue energy collide in a world-shaking blast. The Count watches in horror as his own energy is literally devoured by the prince's aura. A massive explosion levels part of the training ground. When the dust clears, the prince's wooden sword is still whole, but the Count's sword has been snapped into two halves. Adrian stands victoriously. "You used all 4 rings, uncle, and you still lost." He points at the broken wood. The absolute truth that a heart is inferior to a chain? Consider it denied. Count Bill Ballarhard has lost the match. The victory is short-lived. A dark, raging power surges in Adrian's depths, and he collapses in his room, clutching his chest in agony. He falls into a fever dream, seeing visions of a mad dragon enveloping his soul in blood. Adrian jolts awake in bed, coughing violently. "That damn hymn," he mutters, gripping the sheets. The true dragon-slaying hymn is a myth-rank power. Drawing it out has turned his human body into a total wreck. But as he checks his status, he sees his power level has risen significantly. He feels ready for his upcoming duel with the third prince. "Master, you're awake!" Adelia bursts into tears of relief. She tells him the palace has been in total chaos since he collapsed, and the queen has never been so angry. "Serves them right," Adrian mutters. Adelia mentions that his uncle left a message, but Adrian tells her to wait. He needs to recover his spirit first. If he doesn't, the memories of his past as a sword will mix with reality until he becomes a madman, trapped forever in a severed world. Just the thought makes him tremble. The Hymn of Subordination. Adrian looks at Adelia. He tells her about her ancestor, Agnes Byron, the great swordswoman. He explains that since Adelia is her descendant, she has the potential to inherit a legendary hymn once she grows stronger. "How do you feel about the sword, Adelia?" he asks. Adelia looks frustrated, struggling to find the words. Finally, she looks him in the eye. "I will become your sword. My life, everything. I dedicate it to you." Ping! A giant golden tree manifests behind Adelia, its light filling the room. Adrian is stunned. This isn't just a battle hymn. It's an oath of submission that binds their souls together. Adrian realizes this is a huge benefit. As the target of her hymn, Adelia's growth will now directly benefit him as well. He thanks her, leaving the poor girl shivering and flustered. A few days later, the queen visits Adrian's room. Adelia and Kars stand by, watching as she asks if he feels any better. Adrian finds it awkward to deal with someone who truly cherished the original Adrian, but he plays along. The queen asks if he resents his uncle for the brutal duel. Adrian tells her he doesn't have a single bad feeling. "Why not?" she asks. "He treated you so roughly." Adrian smiles a dark, knowing smile. "I don't resent him because I already landed the finishing blow. I denied his pride. I denied his truths." He explains that he planted an inner demon of doubt in the Count's heart. If the Count can overcome that doubt, he will grow even stronger. But if he can't, he will lose his prowess as a knight forever. The queen sighs. She tells Adrian that his uncle was actually proud of him. In fact, the Count was the one who persuaded the king to lift Adrian's probation early. Adrian is genuinely surprised by this, but the queen's face falls. "But trouble arose as soon as you were released," she says. "Your uncle's position must be quite difficult now because of the chaos at the social club, the sly scholar, and the iron-blooded theory." Ian finds himself in a bizarre standoff. After the queen's visit, he is introduced to Niccolo Marchandale, an old, highly esteemed scholar who is visibly thrilled to teach the prince. Ian's immediate reaction? He starts flopping onto the floor like a dramatic toddler, shouting that he doesn't want to study. Niccolo doesn't miss a beat. He asks if a man shouldn't learn the difference between a human and a beast. "Are you calling me a beast right now?" Ian snaps. Niccolo calmly replies that since Ian has only just begun his studies, he can't even be called a beast yet. Ian tries to flex, claiming he already knows everything he needs to and that he is far beyond simple lessons. Niccolo, showing a sharp, sly wit, proposes a deal. They will simply have a discussion on a few topics. If Ian's skills are truly as great as he says, Niccolo will stop visiting. They dive into it, and before long, Ian is slamming his hand on the table, passionately arguing that exactly that is why one must always watch their back, and that it's human nature to walk all over those who are too lenient. Niccolo smiles and hands him a book called The Theory of the Iron-Blooded Monarch. The theory evaluates the relationship between a ruler and subject as a transaction, military and economic support in exchange for protection and stability. Ian is actually impressed. This makes sense. All relationships should be about give and take. They yap each other's ears off until sunset, and when Niccolo packs his books to leave, Ian enthusiastically waves him off, promising to continue the discussion tomorrow. It's only after the old man is gone that Ian realizes he just got tricked into taking a normal lesson. That old man is really sly, he mutters. The uncle's penance. A few days later, Ian is lounging in bed, feeling low-key bored. His body is recovering, and without training, he feels he's been living too diligently. Adelia knocks, announcing that his uncle has arrived. Count Balarhard enters, but the transformation is shocking. The fierce northern commander looks like he's on the verge of seppuku. He still hasn't overcome the inner demon of doubt Ian planted in his mind. I am sorry, the uncle says quietly. He admits he broke his own promise and caused Ian a great injury. Ian feels a pang of conscience. The injury actually came from overusing the myth rank hymn, not the uncle's blade. But hearing his mother's words about the Count's secret care makes it hard to be mean.
The uncle tells Ian to speak his desire. If you ask for my arm, I'll give it, or even my eye. Ian snorts. What am I supposed to do with junk like that? He decides to be generous. I want to go on an outing, somewhere far, outside the capital. The uncle agrees to arrange a schedule around the upcoming banquet. After he leaves, Kars is stunned. He thought Ian would demand something much more unreasonable to exploit the Count's guilt. Ian just shrugs. Seeing that stubborn old man acting like that made me feel bad for him. Kars actually starts laughing, which Ian finds a little too comfortable. Amidst the recovery, Adelia brings a letter from Arwen. Arwen has achieved a small accomplishment and hopes to visit Ian soon. It's the right news at the perfect time. 5 days later, the schedule is set. The group heads out of the capital, bound for Ellen County. Ian is so excited he keeps popping his head out of the carriage window, annoying his uncle. The Count explains that Ellen County is the kingdom's greatest weaponry production site, supplying more than half of the royal family's arms. Ian realizes it's time he found a sword of his own. He had planned to just take one from the royal armory, but Kars informs him that due to his track record of self-stabbing, a royal decree forbids issuing him any weapons. Considering his past, that's only natural, Ian admits. The 20-day journey has a specific roadmap. Ellen County, 3 days from the capital to find a blade. Iron Lion Castle, 2 days further to visit Arwen. Currently, Ian is stuck in a carriage for 3 days with Adelia, who is no fun because she only answers in yes or no. He decides to use the downtime to check his mana heart. He closes his eyes and focuses on the rattling of the carriage and the voices of the knights. He gathers every scrap of mana he can find. Suddenly, his vision flashes. Sword expert. His heart has grown massive because he glimpsed a fragment of that colossal will when he used the myth rank hymn. His physical constitution has leveled up, and his third eye and third ear have significantly improved. I've gone another step further, he cheers, testing his arms. They finally arrive at Ellen County and are greeted by Edgar of the Ellen family and his son, Terrence. As they walk through the mansion, Ian is disappointed. The walls are filled with low-grade, flashy weapons that are useless in combat. He demands to see the Blacksmith's Guild. Edgar warns him that blacksmiths are rough, stubborn men who will ignore even their lord when work is in full swing. As they enter the guild, the intense heat of the furnace hits them, but Ian doesn't feel the heat. He is completely, utterly captivated by the rhythmic, heavy sound of a hammer striking hot steel. He stands there, mesmerized by the noise of the iron, ignoring everything else. Edgar stops, looking back at the frozen prince. Your Highness, what's wrong? As Ian steps into the heart of the Blacksmith's Guild, the world outside ceases to exist. It isn't just the ambient heat, it's the symphony of creation. He closes his eyes and lets his heightened senses drink it all in. The roar of the massive furnaces, the rhythmic, serpent-like hiss of the bellows, and the bone-shaking, metallic thud of hammers meeting glowing steel. Among this wall of sound, one specific frequency strikes him with a force that nearly knocks him over. It is a memory of the very first vibration he felt when he was forged as a sword centuries ago. He's so deep in this sensory flashback that he doesn't feel the sweat stinging his eyes until Adelia gently wipes his face. Your Highness, you were in a total daze, she whispers, her voice filled with genuine worry. Ian just blinks, his gaze already snapping back to the old man at the anvil. Suddenly, the atmosphere is ruined. Zaxxon, the guildmaster, comes stomping over, his face red. He starts screaming at the old mastersmith to drop his hammer and bow to the great Prince Adrian. Ian doesn't even wait for the sentence to finish. He reaches out and physically clamps his hand over Zaxxon's mouth. You are too loud, Ian hisses, his eyes flashing with a dangerous light. He looks around and sees the other artisans, men with calloused hands and soot-stained faces, standing there like deer in headlights. He realizes they were dragged here against their will just to put on a show for royalty. "I didn't order this theater," Ian tells them, his voice echoing through the forge. "Your iron is cooling. Unless you want the furnace fires to die out, get back to work." They don't need to be told twice. They scramble back to their stations and the forge returns to its beautiful industrial chaos. Ian remains, completely captivated by the old man at the center of the room. He watches every swing, feeling the resonance in his own bones, as if he is walking the path of iron alongside the smith. Edgar leans in and whispers the tragic mystery of the man. For 6 straight months, this master smith of swords has been trapped in a loop. He forges what anyone else would call a masterpiece, looks at it for a moment, and then immediately throws it back into the melting pot. He hasn't slept in a month. He is clinging to his hammer with a desperation that belongs to a man who knows his time is running out. He's looking for something, a perfection that doesn't exist in the physical world. Ian watches him for days, from the first light of dawn until the embers glow low at night. He is a silent witness to a man pouring his literal soul into a piece of steel. Twilight of the Gods. On the day Ian is supposed to depart for Iron Lion Castle, the sword still isn't done. Ian feels a heavy weight of regret in his chest. He truly wanted to see the soul of that iron before he left. But then, at the absolute crack of dawn, Edgar comes sprinting toward the carriage, gasping for air and shouting the news. "It's finished! The master smith has finally completed it." Ian doesn't even wait for the carriage door to fully open. He sprints back to the forge. There, standing by the anvil, the old master smith holds up a blade that seems to capture and bend the morning light. It is a complete, undeniable masterpiece. The old man bows, his body trembling with exhaustion, and dedicates the sword to Ian. Ian takes the blade, and as his fingers touch the hilt, he begins to sing a low, ancient hymn. Heat it like the sun rising on the horizon. Cool it until its hue matches the king's crimson robes. If you do so, a sword like the sun and a king shall be born. Ian looks down at the perfect edge. Does it have a name? Twilight, the master smith wheezes. The twilight of dawn, or the twilight of dusk? Ian asks softly. The old man looks into Ian's eyes. For me, it is the dusk, but for you, your highness, it may be the dawn. Ian chuckles, genuinely impressed by the old man's eloquence, but the moment is broken as the smith's eyes roll back and he collapses. Ian catches him before he hits the floor. The final secret. Ian refuses to leave. He orders the camp to be set up right there in the forge. That night, sitting by the old man's bedside, the master smith stirs. He looks at Ian and whispers that the moment the prince stood behind him, the sword finally took its true shape, as if by destiny. The sword decided when it would be born. Ian leans in close, ensuring no one else can hear. He whispers his true identity into the dying man's ear. "I am the magic sword Gruhorn." The master smith's eyes fly open. A look of pure, transcendent realization washes over his face. "Is that the truth?" he gasps. Ian confirms it with a nod. The old man sighs, a look of absolute peace settling on his features. He asks to hold the blade one last time. Even though his hands are shaking violently, he grips that hilt with every ounce of strength he has left, praying that the sword will become as great as the legendary soul holding it. Ian holds the old man's hand until his final breath. It wasn't just a sword, it was a life's work. The next day, Edgar arrives with a completely different weapon. Sweating nervously, he presents a magic sword, stammering through a desperate excuse. He claims that while one cannot simply put a price on a sword forged with a smith's actual soul, it would just be too inconvenient for daily use. He offers this new magic sword as a dedication instead, practically begging for a trade to get his original masterpiece back. Ian calmly inspects the new weapon. He nods in approval, noting that while it isn't exactly a high-grade weapon, it is still a very solid, middle-grade magic sword. When Edgar anxiously tries to steer the conversation back to reclaiming the original sword, Ian completely flips the script. Feigning deep admiration, Ian praises the renowned master smith. He declares that pouring one's soul into a blade is already a tremendous gift, but to offer a magic sword in addition to it, Ian smiles, loudly praising the exceptional, unwavering loyalty of the Ellen family towards the royal crown. Edgar realizes he has been completely outplayed. He was just trying to get his masterpiece back, but now he is forced to swallow his pride and accept his place. Forcing a painful smile, he bows and tells Ian it is truly an honor. As soon as he turns away, Edgar literally starts tearing his own hair out in sheer frustration, but ultimately just lets it be. The Simp Gauntlet of Iron Lion Castle. The journey to Iron Lion Castle is a physical nightmare. Ian's human body is a disaster. He spends 3 days throwing up on the side of the road because he doesn't know how to ride a horse. He's falling off, the horse is running away. It's a comedy of errors. But when he finally sees the towering spires of the Iron Lion
castle, the sword expert in him wakes up. The castle gates swing open, and the spirit of the knights is overwhelming. It's thick with the smell of jealousy and testosterone. Why? Because Arwen is there. She steps forward, her hand over her heart, and bows deeply. "I have counted the days waiting to see you again, Your Highness," she says softly. Boom! The atmosphere instantly sours. Every knight in the Iron Lion squad is a total simp for Arwen, and they are all looking at Ian like they want to bury him in a shallow grave. Even worse, Adelia's berserker aura starts leaking out. She's looking at Arwen with a look that says, "I will dismantle you." Ian has to quickly use his master authority to calm Adelia down before she starts a civil war. "I've heard the Iron Lions are the best in the kingdom," Ian announces as they reach the training grounds. "Who will show me their blade?" Silence. He scans the rows of elite knights and scoffs. "What? Is the title just a bluff? Are you all just faint-hearted children?" That does it. Dale of the Dennet, a hot-blooded first year, charges out of the line. "I am far too lacking to represent our sword, but if you permit it, I will stand before you." Crack! Ian doesn't even use a real sword. He meets Dale's charge head-on. Much to everyone's horror, Dale is the one who suffers the massive backlash. He is sent flying backward, coughing up blood as he hits the dirt. "Who's next?" Ian asks, his voice cold. Paul Rothheim, a third-year veteran, steps up next. He gets absolutely cooked. Then come the 5th years, then the 7th years. Ian is systematically and brutally humiliating the most elite squad in the kingdom. One by one, the invincible Iron Lions are hitting the dirt, unable to even touch the trash prince. The gauntlet of broken egos. Ian stands in the center of the training yard, the blue aura of a sword expert shimmering around him like a heat haze. One by one, the elite trainees of the Iron Lion squad step up, and one by one, they are systematically dismantled. "I'd like to face the official knights now. Are you all really this slow to move?" He turns his gaze toward Arwen, who has been watching the carnage with an unreadable expression. "Arwen," Ian calls out, his tone commanding. "You will be coming with me when I return to the capital." Arwen doesn't hesitate. She places her hand over her heart and bows. "If that is what you will, master." That does it. The simmer of resentment among the official knights finally boils over. A tall, imposing man steps forward, his hand resting on the hilt of a beautifully crafted sword. This is exactly what Ian wanted, to draw out the big fish, the wager of the masterpieces. "I hear you enjoy wagers, Your Highness," the knight says, his voice dripping with suppressed fury. "Let's make a small bet to liven things up." Ian denies it instantly. Arwen is not a tournament prize. She's a person, not a trophy for you simps to fight over. But then, Ian's eyes catch the knight's blade. He turns to Cars. "Cars, bring me the sword." Ian draws the magic sword that Edgar of the Ellen family gave him. The steel hums with a faint, low-grade magical resonance. "If you win, I'll give you this," Ian announces. The knights gasp. A magic sword, even a middle-grade one, is worth a small fortune. Arwen tries to protest, but Ian looks at her with absolute sincerity. "You are 100, no, 1,000 times more precious than any piece of enchanted steel. The value of a future swordmaster cannot be compared to a mere tool." The knight's eyes gleam with greed. "I am Dunham of the Fahrenheit family. I am an official Iron Lion knight on the verge of achieving a triple chain." "So, you're still a double chain," Ian says flatly. Dunham's face turns a bright, indignant red. "The sword I hold," Dunham shouts, drawing his blade, "is the 17th masterpiece ever created by the legendary master smith of swords. If I win, yours belongs to me." Ian bursts into a fit of dark, amused laughter. What a coincidence. He reaches to his hip and draws the blade the old smith poured his final breath into. "I also happen to have a sword from that master. But this is his 100th work." Dunham stammers. "Impossible! There are no rumors of a 100th sword." "I expect not," Ian says, his voice dropping to a whisper. "It was his final work, completed only a few days ago. He gave his life for this steel." Ian turns to Adelia, his eyes glowing with an ancient draconic light. "Adelia, watch closely. This is the path you must walk from now on." The Silver Lions plead. Meanwhile, high above the training grounds in a private balcony, Count Balerhard, Uncle Vale, and York, commander of the 3rd Legion, are sharing a drink. York notes that this is Vale's 4th visit, and they begin discussing the political mess of the succession. York admits that the first prince was always the legitimate heir, but his reputation was so toxic that no one, not even York, could support him. "Why act like a guardian now?" York asks. Vale looks out at the courtyard, his eyes heavy with guilt. He tells York the truth about the old Adrian, the scoundrel who once tried to stab his own uncle in a drug-fueled rage. He tells York about the poisoned wine Adrian sent him as a gift, a letter laced with literal toxins. Vale admits he drank it anyway, burning the poison away with his mana and
burning away his love for his nephew at the same time. But that scoundrel is gone, Vale says, his voice trembling slightly. The boy down there, he is someone else. He endures training that would break grown men. He is growing stronger every second. Vale does something the Silver Lion would never do. He bows his head to York. I beg of you, give him a real chance. Let him stand at the same starting line as his brothers. Before York can respond to the legendary commander bowing, a soldier crashes into the room, gasping that the first prince has done something in the yard, the hyper-focus of a god. York and Vale rush to the balcony, expecting to see Adrian being beaten senseless by Dunham. York even mutters that Dunham knows his limits and won't hurt royalty too bad. Crash! Just as they reach the railing, a body comes flying through the air and slams into the wall below them. It's Dunham! The triple chain candidate is unconscious, his 17th masterpiece sword vibrating in the dirt. Ian stands in the center of the crater, his eyes glowing with a terrifying, unnatural light. He remembers his uncle's words, a night truly begins at 2 rings. Ian admits to himself that he struggled a bit with Dunham. A standard sparring him isn't enough to bridge the gap, but he can't risk unleashing the Dragon Slayer him on a fellow knight without killing him. Instead, Ian activates his hyper-focus trait. The world goes dead silent. The wind stops. The cheering of the crowd fades into a muffled hum. The only thing that exists is the enemy. Ian's body begins to move with a terrifying, liquid grace that shouldn't belong to a human. He doesn't just fight, he dominates. He takes on the next knight, then the next, and the one after that. He is a whirlwind of steel and blue mana. Every time a knight tries to go on the offensive, Ian is already there, parrying the strike before it's even fully formed. The evolution of the epic. 5 consecutive wins! The crowd begins to roar. The knights, who were eager to rip him apart 10 minutes ago, are now shouting his name in awe. Ian can feel it. The epic of duels in his heart is vibrating. It's absorbing the victory, the sweat, and the collective spirit of the Iron Lions. A pillar of dense, sapphire blue mana erupts from Ian's body. The shape of the hymn changes, morphing into a more complex, powerful resonance. But the strain is too much. Ian has pushed his expert-level heart past its physical limits. His mana begins to disperse. His vision blurs. Ian drops to his knees, using his sword to prop himself up. A knight runs over, not to attack, but to help him. Your Highness, we truly pay respect to the victory you achieved today. Ian looks up, baffled. The simps are gone. In their place are warriors who recognize a superior blade. York steps down into the yard, a small smile on his face. Men are simple creatures, Your Highness. Nothing excites them more than a display like that. Vale looks at his nephew with a look of pure, unadulterated pride. A fair defeat is more valuable than a foul victory, he says. Ian realizes that even though the world abandoned the mana heart, the spirit of the knight, revering the strong and being gracious in defeat, is the one thing that never changed. The departure and the shadow of Jillian. The day of departure arrives. The Iron Lions line up to see Ian and Arwen off. York promises to pray for Ian's health, but Ian leans in with a final request. Keep everything that happened here a secret. York is confused. Surely this news would help Ian's reputation. Ian just smiles a wicked, mischievous smile. I want to mess with my brother Jillian a little bit. I want him to think I'm still the same old pig until I'm standing right in front of him. The carriage rolls out as the sun sets. Ian is drained. He sits inside with Adelia, who is still just polishing cups. He looks at this girl, a literal sword genius with S-rank aptitude, and she's still doing maid chores. Is there something you're displeased with, Your Highness? Adelia asks. Seeing his frustrated expression, Ian just hobbles over to his bed. No, just leave me. I need to rest before the real fight begins. The Iron Lions are conquered. Arwen is recruited, and the epic of duels has reached the extraordinary rank. As Ian reflects on his time with the Iron Lion Knights, a bitter realization settles in. Through his authority of judgment, he saw the truth. The majority of these elite knights possess almost zero genuine talent for the sword. In his previous era, these men would have struggled a lifetime just to reach an intermediate level before fading into obscurity. Yet, in this strange new age, these same ordinary men are reaching the realm of sword expert in their 20s. How? The mono chain. It has raised the floor for the masses, but it has utterly demolished the ceiling for superhumans. His uncle, a man who could have aimed for true transcendence 400 years ago, threw that potential away to follow the efficient path. Ian hates to admit it, but he is a relic. He doesn't know this era, and he doesn't understand a world that has traded the heights of legendary martial hymns for the safety of extraordinary grade mediocrity. I have to start from zero, he tells himself. I need to learn this world if I'm going to survive. When Ian voices his desire to learn, his uncle Vale practically beams with pride. It's not too late. With effort, you can achieve your dream. What dream? Ian asks, baffled. Vale points out that Ian has already won the hearts of the Iron Lions, something the other
princes couldn't do in 1,000 years. Then, the Count drops a nuke. He stands tall and declares his full title, Lord Vale of the Northern Balerhard County. He officially pledges his sword and his house to support the succession of the first prince. Ian's jaw hits the floor. He never wanted to be king. He just wanted to lose weight and regain his old power. But the declaration is a bombshell. Suddenly, the palace is in an uproar. Royal knights, servants, and sycophants are sent to his quarters by royal decree. He is no longer the outcast prince. He is the frontrunner. The peace is shattered when Prince Gillian, the third prince, barges into his room. Gillian is livid, convinced Ian was a secret genius hiding under their uncle's wing this whole time. You played the fool well, Gillian spits, promising that he will make Ian pay dearly for the deception. Ian can only sigh. He's being dragged into a war he didn't sign up for. Ian tries to back out, telling his uncle to find an appropriate time to withdraw his support, but Vale looks him in the eye with a chilling intensity. He asks if Ian knows the fate of a firstborn son who fails to take the throne. Legitimacy is a curse, Vale warns. It doesn't disappear just because you crouch down. Unless you are dead, you are a threat to your brothers. You can't hide from this, Adrian. Ian realizes the trap. His legitimacy is a target on his back. While he only cares about regaining his transcendent power, the world only cares about his right to rule. The royal banquet arrives. As the doors swing open, Ian makes his grand entrance. The whispers are deafening. The guests gasp. The piggy prince is gone. In his place is a tall, dignified man who looks exactly like the king in his legendary youth. Ian looks out at the crowd with absolute disdain. Through his judgment, he sees a sea of nobles carrying the trait heart of a serpent. To him, they are all filth, greedy vultures who have built their lives on trampling others. The only person worth looking at is Taylor Talaheim. When Adrian calls him over, Taylor is startled, but he greets the prince with genuine, uncorrupted respect. Ian smiles faintly. Taylor may not be a genius, but he is a clean vessel, someone Ian can actually work with. Suddenly, the mood of the ballroom shifts from festive to suffocating. The guards announce the arrival of Ambassador Kuon de Bourgogne Montelier of the Bourgogne Empire.
Ian's gaze becomes razor sharp. Borgonia. The very name makes his ancient soul burn with rage. 400 years ago, that empire was the nemesis he and King Leonberg fought against for decades. It was the source of every scar on this land. And now, this obese, arrogant ambassador walks into the room, and the local nobles bow to him with more respect than they show their own royalty. Ian is on the verge of drawing his blade and ending the ambassador right there. The atmosphere is like a tinderbox. But just as Ian is about to snap, a clumsy noble, Marquis Belefeld, accidentally trips and spills a full glass of wine all over Ian's new black clothes. Ian glares at the old man, but the Marquis just keeps bowing and apologizing profusely. Ian is forced to leave the hall to change, his head cooling down in the process. He realizes the Marquis didn't trip. The old man saw the killing intent in Ian's eyes and spilled the wine specifically to prevent a diplomatic massacre. At least not everyone here is a snake, Ian mutters. Back in his study, Ian talks to Vale. He asks how the kingdom, the land he helped build, ended up kneeling to the empire. Vale explains the mediocre history. The empire grew, the kingdom stayed small, and eventually the power gap became too large to bridge. Ian looks at the blue mana flickering in his hand. He realizes the real reason they fell. They lost the martial hymns. They lost the soul and the legends that made them strong. He turns to his uncle, his eyes burning with the fire of the ancient swordmaster. I've changed my mind, uncle. I'm going to try being the king. Vale is taken aback, but Ian has already made his choice. He built half of this country from the ground up 400 years ago. He isn't about to let a bunch of serpent hearts and foreign invaders tear it down. The second day, the country boy's legacy. On the second day of the banquet, Ian enters with Count Vale at his side. He looks down at the nobles with even more disdain than before. Their etiquette is sloppy, their respect is hollow, and they are terrified of him. He thinks back to his old friend, the first king. That boy was just a country boy from a remote village whom everyone scorned. He wasn't particularly upright or noble by birth, but he became a legend. Ian realizes that if a country boy could build this kingdom, a trash prince can certainly fix it. He draws in a breath, and suddenly, a brilliant, blinding blue mana begins to radiate from his body, pulsing like a second heartbeat. He begins to sing the hymn of the king. Instantly, his world turns into a blur of agony. His human body, still a work in progress, shudders under the weight of the song. This is a hero-grade hymn, and even after all his training, he can only manage to force out a single verse, barely a quarter of the full power. He clutches his chest, his fingers digging into his ribs as he grits his teeth. He thinks to himself, compared to the myth-grade dragon-slaying hymn,
this is nothing, but it still feels like my veins are full of liquid lead. The effect on the ballroom is devastating. The gossiping nobles, whom Adrian internally calls a flock of sheep, are instantly silenced. The sheer royal pressure of the mana forces them to their knees. It isn't a choice, it is an absolute submission to the supreme being standing before them. Adrian watches them with cold satisfaction. "You may raise your heads," he declares, his voice echoing with a power that wasn't there yesterday. But then, the atmosphere shatters. A mysterious, chilling surge of energy, sharper and colder than his own, slices through the room. Adrian's eyes snap to the back of the hall. A hooded figure slowly reaches up and pulls back her cowl, revealing long, pointed ears and a face of such ethereal beauty it feels like a physical blow to the chest. An elf. To the commoners, elves are the gardeners of the forest, benevolent beings who wouldn't hurt a life. Adrian knows the truth from 400 years ago. He's seen them crush the life out of cute creatures for sport. They are a cruel, predatory race that uses their beauty as a lure. And this woman? She is an elder high elf. Her name is Sigrun, the dancing magic swordswoman. She didn't just help slay the mad dragon 400 years ago. She was the lunatic who used to obsessively stroke Gruhorn's blade, whispering that she wanted to possess the sword forever. Adrian's soul screams. If she recognizes me, I'm dead. She'll turn me back into a weapon, or worse. Sigrun smiles, her eyes gleaming with a predatory curiosity. Surprising, she chimes, her voice sounding like glass breaking. To think someone still remembers the hymns. Adrian tries to play it cool, violently shaking his head and claiming he's never seen an elf before. Sigrun just leans in, her scent like fresh rain and blood. "You're lying," she whispers. The consort circus. After the elf's terrifying entrance, the consort selection begins. It is an absolute nightmare of human greed and stupidity. Queen Margarita sits beside Adrian as a parade of noble daughters is marched in like livestock. The toddler, a girl who can barely walk. Too young, Adrian mutters, not even looking up. The wallflower, a girl so shy she's practically vibrating with fear. She won't even make eye contact. Next, the Amazon, a woman who looks like she wants to duel him to the death right on the dance floor. She came here for a fight, not a marriage. The inanimate objects. Someone literally presents him with a teddy bear and then a porcelain doll. Adrian rejects every single one. The queen is fuming, her face turning a regal shade of red. "Adrian, this is about the future of the kingdom. You can't just expect them to be like your usual tavern flings. They must be wise, healthy, from respectable houses." Suddenly, the guards announce the elf delegation. Sigrun steps forward, flanked by two shrouded companions. She bows gracefully to the queen. "I hear you are looking for a spouse for the prince." Adrian watches in horror as Sigrun starts her shameless lie campaign. She claims she is a high elf of prestigious lineage and that her age is, coincidentally, not far apart from Adrian's. "You are nearly 1,000 years old," Adrian screams internally. "You were a grandmother when the kingdom was founded." Sigrun continues her sweet talking, actually blushing like a teenager. She tells the queen that an eternally beautiful elf is the ideal consort. She looks at Adrian, her gaze burning into his soul. "From the moment I saw him, I felt our fates were intertwined. The nobles are buzzing. An alliance with the Mistletoe clan? It would be a global shift in power." Adrian realizes he's about to be married to a legendary executioner who might just recognize the sword in his soul. He doesn't wait for the queen to answer. He lunges forward, grabs Sigrun's hand, and drags her out of the hall and into a private, dark study. The delicacy strategy. "State your true purpose," Adrian demands the second the door slams shut. "Elder High Elf Sigrun, the blade of the Mistletoe clan. Are you here to investigate a crime or to execute a sentence?" Sigrun's eyes widen. The mask of the innocent bride drops instantly, replaced by the terrifying aura of a monster. "How do you know my title, little prince?" She releases a wave of dark energy that makes the walls groan. Adrian doesn't move. He knows that if he shows fear, he's discarded junk. If he fights, he's crushed. He needs a third option. He needs to become a delicacy. Something so intriguing, so aged with mystery, that she wants to savor him rather than just killing him. When she asks who he really is, Adrian just gives a low, sly laugh. "If you're so curious, you'll just have to wait and see. I'm just a pitiful prince for now, aren't I?" Sigrun circles him like a shark, observing every detail. "I understand now why I was sent here on such a trivial mission," she says, her smile turning truly wicked. "It was because of you, the cursed engagement." Adrian and Sigrun return to the grand hall, hand in hand, wearing perfect, loving smiles smiles that hide the fact they both want to dismantle the other. Adrian looks at his mother and announces the unthinkable. I will be engaged to Sigrun. Internally, Adrian is dying. He's only doing this to buy time. He tells the queen that because the matter is so important, he wants time to observe his new fiancé. A tactical retreat. Adrian calculates the board. The queen is happy. She sees a massive political asset. Sigrun is happy. She has a new toy to play with until she figures out the secret of his soul. Adrian is alive for now. He has the time he needs to build enough power to eventually face this crazy as hell woman and the empire behind her. If you want to see a hater completely lose his mind, look no further than the third prince. Smashing his desk in pure rage, Jillian is throwing a massive tantrum. He is furious that his trash older brother, Adrian, suddenly gained the support of their uncle and plucked the flower of the Iron Lion Castle. And worse, Adrian even dared to go after the beautiful elf. Jillian makes a dark decision. Since killing Adrian in their upcoming duel would be too complicated, he's just going to chop him up enough so he can never function as a man again. Cut to the training grounds. The legendary Silver Lion, commander of the Royal Knights, steps up to notarize the duel, guaranteeing no one can object to the results. Jillian is so confident, he even brought a massive crowd of nobles just to watch his brother get humiliated. But while Jillian is yapping about not disappointing the spectators, Adrian literally just yawns. Adrian sighs, telling his younger brother he talks way too much. Furious, Jillian charges forward, his blade coated in crackling green lightning, screaming that he's going to end this. But Adrian doesn't even flinch. Unsheathing his sword, a blinding explosion of blue aura erupts around him. He calmly tells Jillian he originally planned to play around, but he's gotten a bit busy lately. With one casual, overpowering strike, Adrian completely shatters Jillian's attack, sending the third prince flying through the air and crashing into the dirt, violently coughing up blood. The Silver Lion is left completely speechless, questioning if this is really the first prince he used to know. He officially declares Adrian the victor, while the spectating nobles gasp in shock. They can't believe the kingdom's promising double-chain knight just got completely trampled by a guy who started training a few months ago. Disgusted by the nobles flocking to what he calls a kid's fight, Adrian turns his back and walks away. By the time Jillian wakes up with a bandage slapped on his head, screaming for his armor to demand a rematch, it's already too late. A knight awkwardly breaks the news. The first prince has already left the capital. Cut to a freezing, brutal blizzard. Adrian is riding on horseback alongside his black-haired companion, heading straight for the rugged north. When asked why he rushed off right after the banquet instead of resting, Adrian makes his goals clear. He refuses to stick around the capital and pathetically beg for the favor of corrupt nobles. He knows that winning over the conservative northern soldiers won't be easy, but if they roll in the mud together, he can earn their true loyalty. Plus, he has a secret reason for running away. If he dawdles in the capital, he might actually end up marrying that lunatic elf who ruins every man she takes an interest in. To survive, he needs to build his strength on the deadliest battlefields of the Blade Mountains. But the journey is absolutely miserable. Adrian is freezing to death, but refuses to hide in the carriage, especially since a loud, annoying old scholar is already taking up the whole thing just to write a book. Adrian checks on Arwen, his dark-haired knight. She is shivering violently, but proudly shouts that she is perfectly fine, refusing to seek personal comfort. Adrian respects her drive, but the rest of the royal knights are a different story. They are brooding and miserable, dragged along by royal decree. Adrian realizes that if his loyal knight Carl were here, he could manage them properly, but the narrow-minded king specifically forbade Carl from joining the expedition. As they push deeper into the snow, Adrian can't help but wonder, even with this body's past reputation, the king's hatred for his own flesh and blood feels way too excessive. There has to be a dark backstory he doesn't know about yet. The falling snow instantly turns into a blinding, deafening blizzard. It becomes a harsh, forced march where the knights can't even hear the person walking right next to them. Realizing they'll freeze to death if they don't hurry, the older knight uses his mana to project his voice over the storm, ordering everyone to abandon the heavy carriages and move on foot. He desperately calls out for Adelia. Before Adelia can fall behind, Adrian reaches out and grabs her hand, pulling her to safety. He makes sure she is alright, but the chaos is only getting worse. The royal knights are getting completely blown off balance by the violent winds because they are holding massive, flat shields. Visibly annoyed, Adrian commands Arwen to look after Adelia while he steps up to take control. He yells at the knights to drop their heavy shields and throw away everything cumbersome except their swords, ordering the biggest guy to take the lead and form a single file line to cut through the wind. Each step in the hellish blizzard feels incredibly heavy.
heavy. Adrian is panting hard, pushing his body's physical limits. Suddenly, a red-haired soldier collapses face first into the snow. Without a second thought, Adrian pushes past his men, rushes back to the fallen soldier, and hoists the fully armored man straight onto his own shoulder. Carrying the dead weight, Adrian barks at the rest of the stunned knights, demanding to know why they stopped marching. Inspired and shocked, the knights immediately fall back into line. Just as the brutal march pushes them to their absolute breaking point, the sky suddenly clears up. The storm vanishes like it was all a lie, revealing a massive, awe-inspiring fortress bathed in sunlight. Catching his breath, Adrian curses the blizzard, muttering that if it was going to stop, it should have stopped sooner. Standing proudly before the open gates of the fortress, the older knight formally reveals himself. As the rightful ruler of Balerhard and the commander of the kingdom's 3rd Legion, he officially welcomes the first prince. Adrian flashes a confident smile, his brutal journey finally complete. The commander looks back at him with genuine respect, sincerely welcoming Adrian to the Winter Castle. Located at the absolute northernmost point of the kingdom, this massive, freezing fortress exists for one reason: to block the terrifying monsters pouring out of the Blade Mountains. It is considered the worst possible duty station for ordinary soldiers, but for those born and raised in Balerhard, defending this wall is their lifelong pride. Enter Vincent Balerhard. Stepping through the gates in heavy dark armor, he officially returns to his post as the Ranger Company commander. He warmly greets his father, Commander Ian, but completely freezes when he notices a blonde kid standing right next to him. Vincent accidentally asks if his uncle had a secret son, forcing Ian to formally introduce the boy as His Highness, the first Prince Adrian. The tension is immediate. Later, in the dark halls of the castle, Commander Ian pulls his son aside with one strict order: people change, so observe the prince without any prejudice. Cut directly to the war room. While Adrian casually sits at the end of the table eating a meal, Ian and Vincent are looking over a map, discussing a massive problem. A pack of nearly 20 orcs has settled right near the entrance of the mountain range. They are too heavily armored to be taken down by standard ranger arrows, so Ian is preparing to deploy his actual knights. But before Ian can give the order, Adrian confidently slides a piece across the map. Flashing a smirk, he announces, "I shall take care of this." Vincent immediately loses his cool. He yells at his father, warning that these aren't normal monsters. They don't even know if elite orc warriors or shamans are hiding in the pack. If a royal prince gets himself killed on one of their main paths, future operations will be ruined, and the Balerhard family will take the blame. Watching the outburst, Adrian internally smirks, impressed that his uncle raised such a strategically smart son. But Commander Ian completely shuts Vincent down, telling him that is enough worrying, and asks Adrian exactly what he needs for the operation. Adrian keeps his demands simple. He needs 3 guides, winter equipment for his guys, and some crossbows. Then, Adrian walks out to the miserable royal knights he dragged from the capital and orders them to move out. The mustached knight, Hansdeck, is totally confused. He stammers, asking why his squad is being sent on an orc subjugation mission when the elite 3rd Legion is right here in the castle. Adrian hits him with bulletproof, sarcastic logic. "Since you're here as my escort, that works out well. You'll have to follow me to protect me anyway." As the royal knights groan and go to collect their gear, Adrian pulls up his system UI to check their stats. He admits they were completely useless in the blizzard, but they are still royal elites. He notes that Hansdeck has solid C-rank swordsmanship and infantry phalanx skills, but then he spots a very suspicious lad named Joseph hiding in the back with a literal disguise trait. Adrian files that information away. Stepping out into the freezing courtyard, Adrian stops in his tracks. Vincent is standing at the gate. The ranger commander has personally volunteered to be his guide. Vincent glares down at the prince, warning him that he is taking this deadly operation way too lightly. Adrian just smiles and says they won't fail. As they lock eyes, intense lightning violently crackles between them. Adrian attempts to view Vincent's stats, but a glaring yellow error pops up. Cannot view the status window. Adrian's eyes widen as he realizes Vincent's level is insanely high, likely a triple chain knight. He then checks the rangers standing behind Vincent. Only one is a real scout. The rest are high-level knights secretly smurfing in basic ranger gear. Adrian smirks, realizing Vincent plans to just push him aside and let his hidden elites handle the fight if things go south. Before they leave, Adrian specifically orders Adelia to stay behind. He knows if her mysterious trait blooms incorrectly in this brutal environment, it will be a disaster. The squad finally marches deep into the snowy, desolate woods of the Blade Mountains. Vincent immediately starts nagging Adrian like a strict tutorial NPC, lecturing him to conserve stamina and watch his footsteps so his hands don't stiffen up on the ice. Adrian rolls his eyes, thinking Vincent's nagging is worse than his uncle's, but the talking abruptly stops. Up ahead, the real scout pulls out his brass spyglass. The scout lowers his brass spyglass and confirms
confirms the target. A massive, heavily armed pack of orcs is waiting dead ahead in the freezing woods. He turns to Adrian, asking exactly how he wishes to proceed. Adrian doesn't hesitate. Raising a single gloved hand, he calmly issues the order: load. The royal knights behind him instantly raise their heavy crossbows, locking them into place. A single bolt flies through the snowy air, piercing a hulking green orc right in the shoulder. The monster roars in confusion, looking for the attacker. Stepping out from the tree line, Adrian's eyes glow with a terrifying, icy blue light. Flashing a predatory smile, he casually greets the monsters. "Hi there, long time no see." Then he drops his hand. Fire. A massive barrage of crossbow bolts tears through the wind, shredding into the front line of the orcs and spraying black blood across the snow. As the surviving monsters roar with deafening killing intent, Adrian steps forward, unsheathing his legendary sword with a sharp, ringing clash. He doesn't hold back. Leaping high into the freezing air, Adrian brings his blade crashing down, brutally slicing through a giant orc's defense in a single, devastating strike. Thick blood splatters across the white snow and directly onto Adrian's face. He takes a heavy breath, a crazed, euphoric smile spreading across his bloody cheeks. This sticky smell of blood, this absolute carnage, is exactly what his soul has been missing and craving for the last 400 years. Standing over the fresh green corpses, Adrian revels in the pure, unfiltered air of the battlefield. Suddenly, Arwen panics. Seeing the first prince surrounded by the horde, she draws her sword and yells for him to be careful. But before she can intervene, Adrian snaps his head back. His eyes shine with a terrifying, unnatural blue aura as he orders her not to come any closer. He warns her with a chilling smirk that if she steps into his range, she might just get swept up in the slaughter. As Adrian turns back to face the roaring horde alone, ancient history begins to unfold. This isn't just a fight, it's a grudge match dating back over 400 years. It is the forgotten tale of a pitiful, nameless man whose absolute hatred for orcs drove him to fight until his body gave out, piling up enough green corpses to raise a literal mountain. A blood-red pond begins to form beneath Adrian's boots. Suddenly, his blue aura vanishes, replaced by a massive, violent explosion of deep crimson energy. Back in the luxurious capital, a dark plot is already in motion. Inside a dimly lit study, the nervous knight Joseph drops a heavy sack of coins onto the desk of a powerful noble. Joseph stammers, terrified of his assignment, whining that people die all the time at Winter Castle. But the Count of the royal court just smirks, his eyes glowing with malice. He assures Joseph that he won't have to fight. The Count believes the scoundrel prince will just hide in the castle and try to steal credit for his uncle's achievements. He strictly orders Joseph to observe every movement in Winter Castle, specifically watching the Ballarhard family, and report anything suspicious. Joseph greedily grabs a second bag of coins, swearing to do his best. Cut directly to the freezing hellscape of the Blade Mountains. Joseph is completely losing his mind. Standing in the snow in his heavy armor, he realizes the Count completely lied to him. A hulking, terrifying green orc crashes down right in front of him, shattering the ice. Joseph screams internally, terrified of the massive monster swinging a giant club. From behind him, the mustached knight Hansdeck desperately barks orders, commanding the first rank to maintain square formation and advance. The knights clash with the massive orc, their shields buckling under the sheer weight of its attacks. Joseph gulps hard, frozen in fear, until Hansdeck screams for the second rank to attack. With a terrified battle cry, Joseph blindly thrusts his spear forward, but his spear completely bounces off the orc's thick hide. The massive monster glares down at the trembling knight, roaring furiously. Joseph screams that they are doomed, raising his hand defensively. Suddenly, a streak of blinding blue electricity flashes past him. Arwen blitzes through the snow, her blade coated in crackling blue aura. With a single, fluid strike, she effortlessly slices the giant orc's throat, sending dark blood spraying across the trees. As the massive orc corpse crashes heavily to the ground, right at Joseph's feet, Arwen stands tall. The electricity violently crackles around her sword as she glares at the trembling spy. She coldly reminds him that this is a battlefield, ordering him not to drop his weapons so easily. Joseph nervously stammers an apology, but the relief is short-lived. The ground violently shakes as a massive pack of orcs, wearing heavy iron helmets and wielding massive spears, steps out of the dark woods. The mustached knight yells for the troops to prepare for battle. Arwen grits her teeth, realizing the horde's numbers are way too large to handle with their small squad. Suddenly, a massive splash of deep crimson blood paints the screen. A terrifying blood-red blade rips straight through the torso of a giant orc. The royal knights and Arwen watch in absolute horror as Adrian, completely engulfed in a violent, roaring red aura, brutally slices through the monster. Panting heavily in the snow, Adrian's eyes are glowing a demonic red as the 400-year-old memory memory completely takes over. Arwen calls out for him, but he is completely lost in the massacre. With terrifying speed, Adrian lunges forward, his sword violently tearing through the horde. The lore of the Nameless Avenger resumes. No matter how many orcs the man killed, it was never enough. Seeking the blood of his enemy, he wandered the barren lands alone. Even when the mana in his heart had long run dry, he did not stop. The memory shows the Avenger brutally ripping an orc apart with his bare hands. He resorted to drinking orc blood and chewing on their raw flesh just to survive. With every step, the man grew increasingly frail until only the demonic sword in his hand sustained him, literally burning his remaining life force for his final wish. The memory flashes back to a horrific, blood-soaked cabin, revealing a destroyed family portrait covered in black blood. The endless slaughter was nothing but a bloody requiem for his murdered wife and daughter. And finally, the lore reaches its tragic end, when the frail, broken Avenger finally faced his lifelong enemy, a massive and possibly strong orc chieftain. He was already a total wreck. In a final, desperate attempt, the old man erupted in a massive explosion of red aura and launched himself at the giant. He swung his blade with everything he had, slicing violently across the chieftain's armor, but a massive purple flash counters his attack. The giant orc brutally smashes the old man across the face, sending him flying backward, violently coughing up blood. The narrator coldly concludes, there was no miracle. Despite the brutal, bone-crushing blow from the chieftain, the frail old man did not give up until the very end. Lying in the rubble, with his face completely battered and bloodied, his unyielding spirit refused to break. The narrator reveals that this was a story told to no one, a tragic history known by absolutely none. Back in the present, Adrian's eyes widen as he realizes the profound truth. He is likely the only person left in the entire world who remembers it all. Snapping out of the 400-year-old memory, Adrian stands amidst a growing pile of corpses as the winter sun begins to set, casting a deep orange glow across the bloody snow. His tactical mindset instantly returns. He turns and fiercely barks orders at his squad, commanding the knights to handle the elite orc warriors while the rest hold off the main horde. Tightening his grip on his sword, a realization hits him. He remembers that the ancient hymn of vengeance was never actually finished. His eyes ignite with a blinding, terrifying blue light as the roaring red aura flares up around him. He makes a chilling vow. He must finish this hymn. What follows is an absolute masterclass in slaughter. Adrian becomes a blur of lethal motion, his blades slicing through heavy wooden spears and cleaving giant orcs in half before they can even react. Dark blood sprays wildly across the battlefield as he dances through the chaotic melee, effortlessly decapitating and dismembering every monster in his path. As the death toll rises, a glowing system window violently glitches onto the screen. A new verse has officially been added to the Hymn of Vengeance. Piling up enough green corpses to raise a mountain, a red pond forms beneath. The massacre finally comes to an end. The sun dips lower, painting the sky in gorgeous, fiery colors. Adrian stands completely still before a massive, slain orc boss, his legendary sword firmly planted straight through its chest. As he catches his breath, a beautiful, ethereal blue and purple aura surrounds him, replacing the violent red. Floating text appears as he honors their souls. The system confirms the evolution. The Hymn of Vengeance has officially become the Hymn of Requiems. Behind him, Vincent steps up to a broken wooden pole. With a sharp crack, the ranger commander snaps the orc's red banner over his knee, officially declaring that the monsters have been annihilated and claiming victory. The surviving rangers throw their weapons into the air, cheering wildly for their hard-fought survival. Adrian slowly turns his head, his golden eyes locking onto Vincent, who is actually smiling with relief for the first time. Adrian thinks about the man's name, Vincent Balorhard. The scene cuts back one last time to the bloody, broken face of the Nameless Avenger from 400 years ago. Adrian realizes the insane, chilling connection. The heir of this modern family, who devotes his entire life to waging war against monsters, bears the exact same name as that pitiful Avenger from the distant past. The Avenger whose dying wish was to surely fight again in the next life. Staring at the modern-day Vincent, Adrian simply smirks, noting how impossibly coincidental it all is. Standing in the aftermath of the slaughter, Vincent holds out the broken red orc banner toward Adrian. He explains that in the 3rd Legion, it is an absolute tradition that the soldier who fights the bravest and claims the enemy's banner gets to keep it as an honorable trophy. Vincent formally acknowledges the prince's strength, declaring Adrian the rightful owner of the flag. Arwen walks up and
respectfully bows, paying tribute to Adrian's incredible bravery. The rest of the troops immediately follow her lead, standing at attention and shouting their respects. Adrian takes the banner, a massive grin spreading across his face. He looks at his men and tells them to say it louder. Raising the torn red flag high into the sunset, Adrian screams at the top of his lungs, "We are victorious!" The surviving knights erupt into massive cheers, praising the prince. Adrian completely revels in the moment, soaking in the victory and the glory. He turns to Vincent, childishly bragging, "I am the owner of this banner." But Vincent completely ruins the flex. He quietly mutters that he personally owns 16 of those exact same banners. Adrian's smile drops into a fierce glare. He yells back, "So what? This banner is mine!" Vincent scowls, thinking to himself that he knew he didn't like this kid. The scene cuts to a massive, roaring bonfire, lighting up the darkening sky. The troops are burning the mountain of orc corpses. Watching the flames, Arwen notes that while casualties were low, it is still a tragedy. Vincent steps up beside them, his face illuminated by the fire. He coldly states that victory is enough mourning for the fallen. Comforting the spirits of the dead with the blood of orcs, that is the Balorhard way. Adrian stares at him in silence, noticing how chillingly similar Vincent's words and name are to the ancient Avenger. Adrian breaks the tension, shifting to business. He asks Vincent if this many troops really came with them originally. Vincent lies, claiming a ranger unit just happened to be passing by and joined the fight. Adrian sarcastically calls it an amazing coincidence, letting Vincent know he completely caught on to the fact that Vincent didn't trust him and had secret backup waiting. But Adrian points out the real mystery. It makes no sense that a heavy orc combat unit pushed this far down the mountain without any rangers detecting their movement. Realizing the danger, Vincent agrees they need to hurry back. The squad finally marches back through the gates of Winter Castle. Commander Ian is waiting to congratulate them on their safe return. The second Adrian sees his uncle, he runs up waving the flag, loudly bragging, "I am the owner of this banner." In the background, Arwen and the other knights deadpan, whispering that he is still bragging about it and counting that this is the 11th time he's brought it up. While Adrian boasts, Commander Ian pulls Vincent aside for a private report. Vincent confirms that the orc unit showed up way too early and was right next to their scouts. Ian's expression darkens. He notes that the orcs either found large prey or something terrible has happened deep within the mountains. He immediately calls Vincent away for an urgent private meeting. Adrian watches them leave, noticing how uncharacteristically submissive and obedient Vincent acts around his father. Suddenly, a voice screams across the courtyard, "Your Highness!" Adelia comes sprinting toward him, panting heavily. She is on the verge of tears, crying that she was so worried because she didn't know if he was in danger or lost in the snow. Adrian softens, giving her a warm smile and calling her name to calm her down. But the second she looks up, he immediately shoves the red flag in her face and asks, "Do you know what this is?" Cut to nighttime. Adrian is lounging casually on a luxurious couch in his private room. Vincent stands before him, formally delivering the news that a new elite ranger unit will be assembled to professionally scout the situation in the mountains. Vincent makes a point to say that since only elites are going, there is absolutely no need for His Highness to step forward for this mission. Adrian raises an eyebrow. "Who said I would?" He leans forward, asking Vincent why he came all the way to his private room just to tell him details of a meeting he isn't a part of. Vincent averts his eyes, admitting through gritted teeth that Commander Ian ordered him to. Adrian smirks, realizing his uncle is forcefully trying to make the two of them get along. Telling Vincent he gets the picture, Adrian dismisses him. Vincent politely tells him to get some rest and leaves, closing the door. Left alone in the quiet room, Adrian stares down at his blood-red trophy resting on the floor. Sitting alone in the quiet, moonlit room, Adrian reflects on his brutal performance during the subjugation. Looking down at his hands, he admits that he was way too immersed in the slaughter. He realizes it happened because it was the first time he fully recited an old martial hymn without missing a single verse. A glowing golden aura begins to slowly manifest around his sword as he thinks about his stolen power. He knows he will probably experience similar, uncontrollable bloodlust from time to time, but suddenly, his train of thought is interrupted. A sharp, repetitive tapping sound echoes through the dark room. Adrian snaps his head toward the window, his golden eyes narrowing. Outside in the freezing wind, a small, white bird is desperately pecking against the glass.